In the 15th year of the apocalypse, inside a dark, damp cellar that never saw sunlight, a zombie with its head blown off lay dismembered on the ground. The moss was splattered with nauseating yellow fluid, and the walls bore streaks of fresh blood. The person in the wheelchair suddenly let out a morbid laugh, pulling the blasted muscles on his face into a distorted shape, his entire countenance eerie and hideous. Hearing the sound, the little zombie squatting to clean the debris looked up with concern, but dared not make a move. Noticing her gaze, Yize manipulated his wheelchair to turn around, his dark eyes devoid of any warmth, as if the manic laughter had not come from him. He stared at the one-armed zombie in front of him and spoke coldly, "What are you looking at?" The crippled little zombie had rotting scars covering her skin below the throat. After asking, Yize remembered she was a zombie and could not speak. The little zombie obediently lowered her head and scrubbed the blood-stained, stinking floor with a cloth. Yize sat quietly in his wheelchair, watching her busy herself, his fierce expression gradually softening. But when he saw her incomplete body, he frowned and fell into thought. Just now his ability had upgraded. For revenge, he forcibly activated his half-destroyed ability core and used cross-space telekinesis to annihilate his enemy's base. He severely injured the treacherous man and woman and also killed their only son. Thinking of them, Yize could not control the hatred surging in his chest. Over the years, he had endured this broken body for the sole purpose of revenge. Back then, his childhood sweetheart and fiancée conspired with the base's deputy leader, causing him to be severely injured during a mission and paralyzed from the waist down. While he was heavily injured, they destroyed his ability core, cut him open like a butcher, and performed experiments on him, ripping out his heart, digging into his liver. Taking advantage of his powerful physique as an ability user, they extracted blood and flesh and cut open his skull thousands of times. He teetered on the brink of death hundreds of times, but they grudgingly provided healing, letting him recover again and again. This living hell, a life worse than death, lasted 4 years, over 1,000 days and nights. Most people in the base knew his situation, but all chose to remain safe. Good, very good. These were the people he had risked his life to protect. Yize's eyes turned bloodshot. He swore that once he gained freedom, he would make them all pay with blood. Yize withdrew his ferocity and looked down at the little zombie who was diligently cleaning the floor with one hand. This zombie had appeared during a siege 4 years after his ability core was destroyed, and he became paralyzed. At that time, a group of incompetent leaders controlled the base. Its fall was only a matter of time. They were busy fleeing and paid no attention to the paralyzed him in the lab. No, they wished for him to die in this zombie outbreak, so they could have an excuse to announce. Yize, in the abandoned basement of the base, listened to the sounds of zombies devouring flesh outside. The lab door was smashed open. Seeing the figure approaching, Yize wished he could tear her apart alive. Gnashing his teeth, he spat out the name of his enemy, Yize. Yize looked down at Yize lying on the operating table, now a crippled waist, and covered her nose, waving her hand in disgust. Yize, you really have a hard life, still alive. If you had died 4 years ago along with your men, you wouldn't have to suffer all this. 4 years ago, Yize would not have shown her true nature. But now, with Yize fully restrained and locked on the operating table, looking more pathetic than a stray dog, she felt a surge of satisfaction. I've been sick of you for a long time. You poor peasant reeking of destitution. People like you, given a chance to survive, will bite back hard. So, don't blame me for being ruthless. Yize drew a knife. Although ability users had extraordinary recovery powers, destroying both the brain and heart simultaneously would ensure death. Yize did not hesitate. The knife plunged into Yize's heart. Blood splattered on her face, yet she smiled with a blooming beauty. So an ability user's blood is warm too. Yize, you're such a waste. If I had your ability, I would never end up like you. She raised the blade again, a hint of regret flashing in her eyes. What a pity. Such good experimental material for studying abilities would be hard to find in the future. If his ability core had not been destroyed, Yize would have chosen to self-destruct and drag that bitch and the whole base to hell with him. Just as the knife was about to pierce his brain and take his life, a green zombie burst through the door and lunged at Yize. Startled, she stumbled back a few steps. But the zombie did not let her go. Its long black nails slashed at her. Yize had no way to escape. She screamed in a pathetic, ugly scream as the nails pierced her cheek. 5 years into the apocalypse, Yize was still useless. In the first year, Yize owed her a life-saving debt, so he agreed to date her and protect her family, supporting them all in the base. He had never treated her badly, yet she allied with the base's deputy leader, stepping on him to climb up. One became the base leader, the other the leader's wife. With her pathetic nature, she must have lived 4 years of pampered luxury. Now, seeing the enemy being hunted by zombies, Yize laughed in relief, laughing until his eyes bloodshot, wishing he could take her life himself. After injuring Yize, the zombie wasted no time and immediately turned to charge at Yize. His gaze was calm, Dying at the hands of a zombie was better than at the hands of that treacherous pair. But to his surprise, the zombie cut all his shackles, hoisted him onto its back, and fled at top speed. The ability users attracted by Cui Anying's screams also noticed Lu Yize and the zombie. The base leader, who had been hesitating, met Lu Yize's cold, powerful, and hate-filled gaze. Shocked, he issued an order with a gloomy look. Lu Yize is colluding with zombies. Detonate the base immediately. Never let him leave alive. But the ordinary people in the base will also be blown up. One subordinate protested, but the next moment he was dragged into the ground by the leader's shadow, suffocating in screams, leaving only a pair of terrified eyes on the surface. The base leader scanned everyone present. Anyone else have objections? Silence fell. Years ago, they had prepared for the worst. If an unstoppable zombie tide came, they would preserve the main force of ability users and abandon the ordinary people in the base. After all, ordinary people were abundant. They would never risk their lives like Lu Yize's group to protect these. The base leader's eyes locked onto Lu Yize being carried by the zombie. With a cold smile, he detonated the ammunition stored beneath the base without hesitation. In an instant, a massive heat wave swept through, forming a giant fireball that exploded in the sky. In this scenario where everyone was doomed to die, Lu Yize did not expect that the zombie carrying him did not hesitate for a second. It wrapped him with all its ability, shielding him tightly beneath its body. When Lu Yize awoke again, his sense of smell revived before his thoughts. Thick blood, gunpowder smoke, and the stench of rotting pus filled the air. He forced his eyes open only to be greeted by a nauseating sight. Severed limbs and remains were scattered everywhere. A chaotic mixture of zombie and human flesh. Red and dark brown blood soaked into the soil. Piles of corpses formed a mountain, each face seemingly engraved with the mark of unclosed eyes. Half of Lu Yize's face had been blown off by the explosion, leaving only one bloodied eye staring at a world drenched in red. He could feel himself lying on top of a zombie. The zombie crawled on the ground, dragging him forward with one arm struggling to move. At the moment of the explosion, the zombie had used its quick judgment to pull him back, retreating away from the. It also used its ability to buffer the shockwave formed on the ground, sacrificing its own body to shield Lu Yize from most of the surface damage. Although zombies, especially high-level ones, possess strong regenerative abilities, this one still lost an arm and a lower leg from such an attack. Lu Yize lay on top of it, letting it carry him. His eyes were dark and suspicious. Even though this zombie had risked its life to save his, he still did not trust it. If it made any sudden move, Lu Yize would kill it without hesitation. Although his ability core was shattered, his hands and feet were now free from restraints. Moreover, this zombie exposed its most vulnerable back to Lu Yize. If he hardened his heart, it would die. During the 4 years of torture in the laboratory, Lu Yize had grown increasingly suspicious. And now before him was a zombie, a creature that preyed on humans. How could he trust it easily? Was this a trap set by the Zombie Alliance base? Or another new experiment devised by those so-called scientists? Lu Yize guessed the worst of human nature with the utmost malice. But even with his cold heart and suspicion, he could not ignore the trail of blood left by this zombie as it dragged him along. The little zombie brought Lu Yize to a shelter it had found in the ruins. After settling him down, it immediately hopped to a corner, dug out a few crystal cores, and held them out to Lu Yize. Zombie crystal cores were valuable. They could enhance an ability user's power and also let zombies evolve. Yet this zombie was offering them to him. Lu Yize stared at it for the first time, unable to read its intentions. 10 years had passed since their first meeting. Seeing the little zombie struggling to stand after cleaning the floor, Lu Yize pulled his thoughts back from the memory. The little zombie pointed outside the door, but Lu Yize refused without hesitation. Don't go out. The little zombie looked at the door and tried to argue again, but Lu Yize coldly snapped, I said don't go out. Can't you understand? Seeing his anger, the little zombie obediently crouched down, picked up the cloth Lu Yize had thrown to it, and wiped the floor in grievance. Seeing that it no longer intended to go out, Lu Yize shifted his gaze. He had just killed half the people in the enemy base and the base leader's only son. By now they probably wanted to tear him apart and drink his blood. He didn't feel safe letting the little zombie go out, afraid it might die out there. At first he thought this little zombie regarded him as a food reserve. But after spending time together, he realized that wasn't the case. This zombie probably liked him. The first time he realized this, Lu Yize felt disgusted. Even now, after 10 years together, he still couldn't understand. His face was ruined, his ability almost completely useless, and he couldn't even stand up. What did this zombie like about him? Could zombies really have such bad taste? In the beginning, the little zombie often went out with wounds to find crystal cores. It would leave injured and return even more hurt, yet it fed most of the cores to Lu Yize. Lu Yize was full of wariness toward this zombie, but because of the ample crystal cores it provided, he was able, after years of struggling, to find a way to repair his shattered ability core. After Lu Yize recovered his spatial ability, he forbade the little zombie from going out anymore. After all, he could retrieve whatever they needed through his ability. Yize watched the little zombie squatting on the floor, diligently wiping. Though it was missing an arm and half a leg if he fitted it with prosthetics. He immediately gritted his teeth. No, it was fine as it was. It couldn't run far like this. The mere thought of the little zombie leaving made his eyes darken. That would never happen. Forget it, he would think about all this after he finished taking revenge. Just now he had used up all the ability he had accumulated over 10 years in one go. He activated spatial compression, unexpectedly destroying half the base, trapping half of its people to die in the cramped space. Among them was Cui Ying's 7-year-old son. Though a child was innocent, Yize deeply understood the principle of killing the enemy and eliminating the root. What a pity that Cui Ying and Dong Hong had escaped. From the moment they had betrayed him and stepped on him to rise, he was destined to fight them to the death. Thinking about how that woman had lost her precious son, Yize felt a rush of satisfaction. On the contrary, at this moment Cui Ying screamed madly, "It's Yize! It must be Yize! He's not dead. He killed my son. They'll kill him, I must kill him." Her piercing, twisted voice, paired with her face scarred by a zombie years ago, was both ugly and terrifying. If it hadn't been for the anti-zombie serum developed earlier, that single scratch would have turned her into a zombie. Having lost his only son, Dong Hong was also reedied with rage. The stronger an ability user's power, the lower the chance of having offspring. Yize had essentially cut off his lineage. He would never let Yize go. It's hard for us to find him on our own, but aren't there many ability users in the base who urgently need high-level cores to advance? The only reason Yize survived back then must be that high-level zombie that saved him. As long as we use that as bait, we're sure to find him. 15 years into the apocalypse, humans had developed instruments that could detect zombies. The moment human ability users surrounded and approached the little zombie, keenly sensed their presence, immediately carrying Yize on its back and fleeing. Yize's eyes darkened as he looked back at the people behind him. All familiar faces, including a subordinate he had personally promoted. How interesting. A 4th-level zombie. The pursuers behind them showed greed on their faces, already treating the little zombie's crystal core as theirs for the taking. They attacked with every move aimed at seizing the zombie's core. The little zombie carrying the paralyzed Yize dodged awkwardly. Yize's eyes turned vicious. They wanted to take this zombie's core. Dream on. Yize turned his head, locking his gaze on the few who were closing in. In an instant they were trapped in place. By the time they realized they couldn't break free, it was too late. The distorted space squeezed their bodies, the air pressure within their range rising continuously. They struggled in the narrow space, blood filling their faces, eardrums bursting, blood spreading to bulging neck veins. Joints bent at odd angles until ultimately their bodies exploded in a grotesque manner. Yize's eyes were as cold as ice, like a vengeful ghost from the underworld. The blood mist spread, and the sudden turn of events intimidated the pursuers behind, allowing the little zombie to quickly widen the gap. What's going on? Wasn't his ability crippled? Someone who had agreed to hunt down Yize asked in shock. Dong Hong snapped back from the momentary shock, glaring fiercely in the direction of Yize, and barked. He has the method to repair a shattered ability nucleus. Chase him. We must capture Yize alive. If a shattered ability could be restored, then there might be a shortcut to enhance abilities. Yize was so powerful, perhaps it was related to the way he developed his ability. After a moment of hesitation, greed shone in their eyes as they surged forward. A blazing fireball dried the moisture in the air and spun rapidly toward the fleeing pair, but the little zombie, carrying Yize, dodged it narrowly. Before they could steady themselves, the ground turned into sharp blades and struck at them. The little zombie was forced to retreat with Yize, and then a domineering net of lightning descended, trapping them, as if they were beasts in a cage. Yize manipulated space to block the attacks and attempted spatial displacement several times, but his position was still pinpointed. Damn it, Yize cursed under his breath. If his ability hadn't been nearly destroyed, he wouldn't be unable to create any distance, even with spatial movement. Seeing his enemy right before him, he wished he could devour him alive. After testing with several waves of lives, Dong Hong and the others realized that Yize was now at the end of his rope, and their abilities surged. They were determined to take the level 4 zombie's crystal core today and capture Yize alive to force him to reveal the method to rapidly improve abilities. The little zombie sensed Yize's intense emotions and immediately retreated at extreme speed, its pitch-black pupils hollow and vacant. Although it had lost one arm and one leg, it was still a level 4 zombie, also known as a mutant zombie, possessing abilities like an ability user. And the little zombie had awakened an extremely rare psychic ability, allowing it to control zombies below its level. Within 1,000 meters of its mental coverage, all zombies under level 4 were under its command. They converged around it, attacking the ability users according to its orders, creating an opening for escape. The surrounding ability users had murder in their eyes, a level 4 zombie, and a psychic-type level 4 zombie at that. If they absorbed its crystal core, even an ordinary person might awaken a psychic ability. They had to dig out its crystal core. Seeing the little zombie expose its ability, Yize's dark pupils burned with a cold fury. Who allowed you to expose your ability? Hearing this, the little zombie froze, then turned to Yize and forced out a stiff, ugly smile, its disfigured cyan skin twitching with a hint of pleading. Yize's expression was cold, but a trace of anger flickered in his eyes. Exposing the psychic ability would turn the other's attention to her, instead of to Yize, who could repair ability nuclei. Perhaps this zombie had already planned to exchange her life for his escape today. Did this zombie want to leave him? Yize's eyes flashed with a sinister gloom mixed with ruthlessness. Just as the zombie was about to carry Yize out through the gap, Donghong's body became ethereal, merging into his own shadow. He reappeared 5 meters away from them. At the same time, the little zombie's shadow, which had been pressed against the ground, suddenly writhed and swelled. Fall back. Yize's voice rang out. The little zombie trusted him unconditionally, leaping up and retreating backward. But the black shadow had no intention of letting them go. It surged toward them, expanding until it blocked half the sky and cut off the zombie's path. The little zombie didn't hesitate to tear at the shadow with its claws, but was instead entangled by it. The moment their movement was restrained, Donghong signaled to his subordinates behind him. Dozens of ability users immediately changed formation, encircling Yize and the one-armed zombie in a circle. Yize squeezed out his nearly depleted ability and unleashed a spatial blade. As he severed the shadow, it instantly formed human-like hind limbs and pulled the one-armed zombie down with full force. At the same time, the gravity around them changed, forcing the little zombie, carrying Yize, to sink. Just then a white blade flashed, and a violent burst of air exploded around them, shattering the entangled black. The altered gravity returned to normal. Yize, blood streaming from his eyes, laughed grimly at those who were determined to take his life. Has he gone mad? He's crushing the fragments of his own ability nucleus to use his ability. Under the terrifying pressure of spatial gravity, someone stared in disbelief at Yize, who had become murderous and couldn't help but feel the urge to retreat. In this situation, the gravely injured Donghong gritted his teeth until they nearly shattered, his eyes tinged with blood. If we don't kill Yize today, he will surely take our lives in the future. Remembering the half of the base that had been slaughtered, everyone's hearts tightened. Yize was vengeful. If he escaped today, he would never let them off easily. Donghong struck first, unleashing almost all his ability, his eyes bloodshot, with the sole purpose of killing. Following him was a high-level water ability user. The air suddenly became humid as a massive water column powerful enough to easily twist steel bars surged toward the one-armed zombie. In that instant, the little zombie focused its mental energy into its eyes, frantically driving its crystal core. The water ability user's tense nerves were momentarily invaded, and the enormous water column veered off course, hurtling toward the ability users themselves. In a flash, it twisted the necks of 2 low-level ability users, killing them instantly. This did not deter the others. After breaking free of the control, the water ability user's gaze at the little zombie grew intensely fervent. As he tried to approach, a spatial resonance triggered within a 50-meter radius, causing a massive explosion of energy in the air. Yize controlled it with precision, twisting space to shatter their ability nuclei, claiming the lives of 6 ability users in an instant. The high-level water ability user blocked the attack with a water shield, while Donghong seized the chaos and dragged an ability user in front of him as a shield. They looked up and saw Yize, blood oozing from all 7 orifices, his eyes bloodshot, laughing wildly and sinisterly. Even if he died, he would drag them down with him. In their eyes, Yize had completely gone mad, draining his already shattered ability nucleus to use his ability. A person with a shattered ability nucleus became a cripple, unable to use abilities. But an ability nucleus could only shatter into at most 21 fragments. If all the fragments were gone, the ability user would die. Everything Yize was doing was a path to self-destruction. He was a complete lunatic. Put me down and get as far away as you can, Yize said coldly. The disfigured, crippled little zombie turned in shock and shook its head without thinking. Yize gripped the little zombie's shoulders tightly, madness lurking in his eyes. He wanted to drag her to death with him, so she would never have the chance to be so devoted to anyone else. The little zombie winced from the pain, then turned and looked at Yize with concern. Meeting her hollow, lightless pupils, Yize slowly released his grip. Forget it. The next moment, Yize crushed the few remaining fragments of his ability nucleus and teleported the zombie 100 meters away. The sudden and unexpected turn of events caught the encircling force off guard. Damn it. We can't let that high-level water ability user sprang up abruptly, his entire body shrouded in water vapor, and instantly burst forth, chasing after the zombie. Before he could cover much distance, a tremendous suction force suddenly came from behind. The high-level water ability user couldn't evade in time, his body stiffened then uncontrollably crashed heavily to the ground. Repeatedly obstructed by a cripple, the water ability user cast an icy glare at Yize. The scorching hot moisture around Yize boiled in the air, the mist gradually forming humanoid shapes, and the vapor in the air condensed into sharp blades, slashing Yize's already disfigured face. It was only then that Yize raised his head, revealing a face drenched in blood, bearing a horrifying grin as he suddenly thrust his hand through the opponent's chest. Unfortunately, his adversary was a water ability user, so he could only inflict severe injuries, not kill him. The water ability user instantly realized his intention and shouted urgently, "Oh no, he's going to self-destruct his ability core." As the words fell, a scorching energy surged wildly. Those in the encirclement couldn't dodge in time. Some low-level ability users perished instantly under the impact. Dong Hong swiftly grabbed two people to shield himself, then used his ability to flee rapidly. But even in death, Yize had no intention of letting him go. Yize's body had reached its breaking point, blood seeped continuously from his pores, and his flesh and bones were shattered by the surging energy. The more it hurt, the more he squeezed out the last remnants of his ability, trapping them all within this confined space with a space barrier, making them his burial companions. He's mad. Completely mad. He's a lunatic. The fragments of Yize's ability core spun energy at high velocity. Just as they were about to detonate, a colossal mental force descended upon them from above. The massive shockwave from the impending ability core self-destruction was contained. Yize looked up and saw the zombie that should have left long ago standing before him. Without a moment's hesitation, she even dug out her own crystal core that sustained her zombie vitality. The immense impact emanating from the crystal core blocked the ability users, while the energy within it poured endlessly into repairing Yize's damaged ability core. This zombie, who had accompanied him for 10 years, reached out for the first time before her death, gently touching him, with a face full of lingering attachment and a smile. Feeling her gradually losing vitality in his arms, Yize's eyes turned bloodshot, his heart shattered with anguish. The sunset dyed the sinking clouds crimson, and the blood-red light pierced through the old hospital window, becoming the sole source of light within the darkness. From the TV in the hospital room, a harsh broadcast crackled through the static. On August 13, 2/24, at 1500, a vicious assault occurred in Building 16 of the university, leaving 3 injured and 1 dead. The suspect fled and later committed suicide to evade. The moment Yize opened his eyes and saw the unfamiliar surroundings, his gaze swept everything with sharp alertness. "Yize, you're awake. Thank goodness you scared me to death. You were unconscious after getting hurt and had a fever for 3 days." A young man in sportswear with a towel draped over his neck, a typical gymgoer, said, while pulling out his phone. "Li Anshang." Yize dredged up this somewhat unfamiliar name from the depths of his memory. The called Li Anshang put down his phone. He had just reported Yize's current condition to the counselor. Yet the moment his eyes met Yize's gaze, an inexplicable chill crawled over him, like being stared at by a venomous snake. "Huh, well, what's wrong?" The voice from the TV continued. Upon hearing the date, Yize's body stiffened. He turned to see the news screen displaying the words 2/24 prominently. The expression on Yize's face gradually contorted. The pain in his abdomen told him this was not a dream. 2/24. So he had returned 15 years into the past. Back to the time before the apocalypse had even erupted. Yize's unusual demeanor gave Li Anshang the creeps. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Having spent 15 years in the apocalypse, Yize quietly suppressed his emotions. He never expected to be reborn 15 years earlier. Before his rebirth, because he obtained the little zombie's crystal core, Yize had managed to repair half of his ability core. He slaughtered with bloodshot eyes, and none of the ability users on the scene survived. Then he charged into the base and tore the culprit Chui Yingying to pieces. This drew the attention of others, and he was besieged by the rest of the base. In the end, Yize held the nearly decayed zombie body in his arms and self-destructed his ability core inside the base. A self-destructed ability core meant certain death. Now, with mixed emotions, Yize looked at his friend, whose memory had grown blurred, and realized he had truly been reborn before the apocalypse. An ingrained habit made Yize instinctively scan his surroundings. When he failed to see the familiar figure, it struck him that the apocalypse hadn't yet come. At this moment, he had no idea where to find that zombie. No, she probably wasn't even a zombie yet. But after 10 years together, he didn't know her name, had never heard her speak. He knew nothing about her. A wave of panic washed over Yize, his entire body tensed up. In the last decade of the apocalypse, Yize had only that zombie by his side day and night. He went from initial wariness and resentment to gradually growing familiar with her presence. Because of 4 years of inhumane experiments in the basement, Yize trusted no one, repeatedly testing her limits with harsh attitudes. Presumably a zombie's mind wasn't sharp, she obeyed Yize so thoroughly that their relationship later became a morbid submission. Yize's controlling impulses erupted completely in the final years. He didn't even allow her to leave. Only Yize knew the true place this zombie, who had accompanied him through the hardest times, weathering his lowest moments, held in his heart. Seeing his grim expression, Li Anshang didn't think much of it, assuming he was still recovering from his injury. After the doctor confirmed no major issues, Li Anshang peeled an apple while sharing his thoughts with Yize. Lucky, you're really lucky. Good thing your little childhood sweetheart was devoted to you. She saved your life. This time you really need to thank her properly. Before Li Anshang could finish, a graceful figure appeared at the door. A girl in a white dress, looking innocent and harmless, gazed at Yize with tear-filled eyes full of affection. Brother Yize, you're finally awake. Upon seeing who it was, Yize's eyes instantly turned sharp and icy. The person he had just dismembered with his own hands was now standing before him with that feigned face. How amusing. The next moment, before anyone could react, Yize grabbed her by the neck and slammed her head violently against the cabinet beside them. Staring at the person before him, a bloodthirsty grin spread across his face, and he enunciated each syllable of the name he loathed to the core: Cui Ying. Cui Ying instinctively screamed from the excruciating pain in her neck and head, startling Li Anshang back to his senses. Yize, are you insane? You'll kill her. Li Anshang had no idea what was happening, but he couldn't just watch Cui Ying be killed by Yize. Yize hadn't lived like a normal person for over a decade. In his past life, he had already tortured and retaliated against Cui Ying. Now he simply wanted to eradicate this menace to avert future calamities. Cui Ying, with her neck squeezed, exhibited a fierce will to survive, struggling wildly. Her face turned purple, and in the midst of the struggle, a piece of paper fell out. Yize glanced down at it and froze instantly. Taking advantage of this gap, Li Anshang seized the moment and pulled Cui Ying away from Yize. Seeing the dark bruise on Cui Ying's neck, Li Chang'an confronted Yize with lingering fear. Yize, are you trying to kill her? After regaining her freedom, Cui Ying coughed violently, gasping for air as saliva dripped from her mouth and tears streamed down her face. Who is it? Yize asked coldly. At the sound of his voice, Cui Ying shuddered instinctively. Seeing the fallen letter, she panicked and reached out to retrieve it. But Yize snatched it first. Staring at the familiar handwriting on the letter, Yize's pupils constricted sharply. It was her. It had to be her. They had lived together for 10 years. That zombie, gravely wounded, had its throat and most of its lower body rotted, rendering it speechless. To communicate, they relied on a pen the zombie had found somewhere and a worn-out notebook writing messages to convey its thoughts. No one knew her handwriting better than Yize. The word she wrote most often was Yize. And now, Jiangyu likes Yize. Yize's deep voice carried an undeniable pressure. His eyes reddened as he stared at Cui Ying, pressing again. Where did this letter come from? Cui Ying met Yize's eyes as terrifying as a demon's and stepped back in fear. Li Chang'an, afraid that Yize might strike again, stepped in front of Cui Ying. Yize, what's wrong with you? No matter what, you can't lay hands on a woman, especially one who saved your life. Yize had no time to explain. Without even glancing at Li Anshang, he moved before Li could intervene. A sharp pain shot through Li's neck, and he lost consciousness, collapsing to the ground. Cui Ying, hiding behind Li Anshang, felt a tightening force around her neck that she couldn't break free from. Terrified, she stared at Yize, who remained motionless on the hospital bed. Overwhelmed by this supernatural power, she cried out, tears and snot streaming. Yize, you can't do this to me. I saved your life. You can't treat me like this. 3 days ago, a violent incident suddenly occurred on the campus of Z University. A man went berserk and bit people, resulting in 3 injured and 1 dead. At that time, the man was attacking 3 female students. Yize, passing by, heard their cries for help and intervened, but was bit on the shoulder by the madman. Yize's consciousness immediately blurred, and he lost his ability to resist. In his last moment of awareness, he saw a vague silhouette standing in front of him. The madman's hands pierced through that person's chest, and his blood-dripping black claws scratched Yize's abdomen. In his past life, after waking up, everyone said that Cui Ying had saved him. They claimed she had taken the fatal blow for him, but luckily it didn't hit any vital organs, though it left an ugly scar on her belly. Yize dismissed his vague impression before passing out as an illusion and believed Cui Ying's words. He had been an orphan since childhood, abandoned at an orphanage. Thanks to his excellent grades, Cui Ying's father funded his education. In high school, he was fortunate to meet several wealthy classmates who provided him with startup capital. With his business acumen and the boom of the internet, Yize accumulated immense wealth and gave substantial financial support to Cui Ying's father. Even Chui Yingying, relying on her family's favor to Yize, spent his money extravagantly. Using the pretext of saving his life, Chui Yingying demanded that Yize date her. After they started dating, she became even more relentless in demanding resources and money. As for the life-saving debt, Yize sneered. It wasn't a madman who had injured him. It was the first mutant zombie. The zombie carried the zombie virus. There were only two outcomes after infection: either mutate into an ability user or become a zombie. If Chui Yingying had truly saved him, she couldn't be an ordinary person. The reason he had a high fever for 3 days was the process of ability awakening. Just like now, though his ability was still weak, Yize could clearly sense the existence of an ability core and could use his power. You saved my life. Hearing this, Yize let out a sinister grin, his face twisted with madness, but his eyes calm and dead, staring at Chui Yingying as if she were a corpse. Under his gaze, the force around Chui Yingying's neck tightened abruptly. Her feet slowly lifted off the ground, and all the air was instantly squeezed out of her lungs. I have limited patience. They'll ask one last time, where did this letter come from? Chui Yingying suffocated until her eyes turned bloodshot. She clawed at her neck in futile struggle, her legs kicking weakly until she gradually lost strength. Terrified by the shadow of death, she completely broke down. He'll talk. It was Jiangyu. I took it from Jiangyu. Where is she? Yize's question left Chui Yingying momentarily speechless, but meeting his terrifying eyes, she trembled and spoke. In the morgue. She's in the morgue. As if to corroborate her words, the TV coincidentally showed the list of victims from the recent incident, and under the column for deaths the name Jiangyu was prominently written. Yize forgot about Chui Yingying's fate. His face turned ashen, and in a daze he relived the moment when that zombie died in his arms. Yize stood up momentarily, pulling at the wound on his abdomen, but thanks to his awakened ability, his recovery rate was far above normal. However, after lying in bed for 3 days, his steps were unsteady. Only after walking a short distance did he gradually adjust to this body. In his past life, after being betrayed by Chui Yingying, Yize had been a disabled wreck for 14 years. He had almost forgotten the feeling of walking. Now only one thought filled his mind: whether human or zombie, he had to find that zombie who had accompanied him for 10 years. As Yize left the room, Chui Yingying finally collapsed to the floor. The space around her seemed to return to the world. Exterior sounds gradually filtered in, and the air was no longer frozen. Chui Yingying gasped awkwardly for breath. The previously vanished noise outside the ward returned, but the chaotic environment only made Chui Yingying's blood run cold. She didn't even spare a thought for the unconscious Lianchang who had tried to defend her. Panicking, she scrambled to her feet and fled the ward in terror. Her eyes revealed fear and deep disgust, her nails digging into her palms. Meanwhile, Yize, the object of her dread, evaded everyone's notice and stood inside the morgue. Amid the countless corpses, an intuitive guide led him to stand before one of the refrigeration drawers. Using his ability, he opened the drawer. Gazing at the figure shrouded in white cloth, Yize's heart beat. When he lifted the cloth and saw that familiar, yet unfamiliar face, all the emotions compressed since his rebirth exploded in that moment. Yize reached out a trembling hand to touch her. His rotted heart began to beat anew. In the cramped bedroom, silver shackles bound a cyanotic corpse. Yize sat in a chair staring at Jiangyu, who showed no signs of life. In the initial stages of the zombie virus, the incubation period typically ranged from half a month to a month. Because of the long incubation period, the virus spread widely and was difficult to contain. The bluish skin, gradually blackening nails, and emerging fangs all testified to her gradual transformation into a zombie. Ever since Yize used his spatial ability to bring Jiangyu back from the morgue to his home, as she gradually transformed into the familiar appearance, he remembered. His heart slowly settled back into place. But at that moment, as he looked at the torn wound on Jiangyu's abdomen, Yize's breath caught in his throat. He reached out, and just before touching the cloth covering her belly, he paused for a moment before lifting it. Upon seeing the entire area of Jiangyu's abdomen torn through with cyan skin gradually spreading with black bloodstains, Yize inexplicably recalled the times he had spent with the little zombie, and a sharp pain struck his heart. The one who had saved him had been her all along. What had she endured before her death? The mere thought made Yize's heart feel as if it were being squeezed by a pair of hands, intense hatred surfacing in his eyes, and he silently added another account against Chui Yingying. Yize gazed at the young girl lying on the bed with closed eyes. Somewhat unfamiliar, yet familiar. Her face, no longer covered by scars, revealed her original appearance. Having known her for 10 years, this was the first time Yize had seen her features clearly. Their first meeting had been in that basement that had nearly become Yize's nightmare. Yize thought he was about to die at the hands of this zombie. On the verge of death, he had no time to pay attention to her. In the following 10 years of living together, her face had been disfigured by an explosion. In that narrow one-room dwelling, the air was filled with the stench of decay. pus scabs her form unrecognizable. She wrapped herself in a black scarf she had picked up somewhere, leaving only a pair of relatively decent black eyes visible. Once when Yize lifted her makeshift veil, while she was asleep, she would immediately wake up. To cover up his actions, Yize harshly rebuked her with disgust and contempt. She didn't respond, only hurt, wrapping herself up even more tightly. In truth, Yize just wanted to see her to confirm her existence. The little zombie without a disfigured face was actually quite beautiful, exactly the type Yize liked most. Her hair was jet black, like ink, her features pure and innocent with long curly lashes that looked docile. Yet her soft features carried a hint of coldness, her whole face lacked worldly warmth. But her lips were soft and full with a small delicate cupid's bow that seemed perfect for kissing. Yize reached out and held her slender left hand from a tight grip to an interlocking of 10 fingers without any gap. In her past life, her severed arms and legs had been a recurring source of anguish for Yize. In this life, no matter what, he would protect her well. Yize closed his eyes, gradually pulling himself away from past negative memories. After calming down, he began to think about his plans. Now, though the apocalypse had not officially arrived, signs were beginning to appear: some extreme weather in certain regions and isolated zombie incidents that had yet to attract attention. It wouldn't be until a month later, when the comet fell, that the apocalypse would truly begin. Zombies, mutated flora and fauna, and extreme weather would follow one after another. The zombie outbreak would spiral completely out of control, and the entire blue planet would fall. In fact, even now a small number of people had already sensed something amiss and started stockpiling supplies, causing a slight increase in prices. Since he had returned to the time before the apocalypse, Yize naturally would not break the trend of hoarding supplies for the future. Moreover, he had awakened spatial ability, which was most suitable for storing food. Every spatial ability user inherently possessed an ability space, which was why spatial ability users were in high demand in the early days of the apocalypse. Each ability user had different ability traits. For example, Yize at his peak in his past life had an ability space roughly the size of several stadiums, and its unique trait was time stasis. Thus, supplies could be preserved without spoilage. However, the drawback of his space was that it could not store living things. They would suffocate to death. And among spatial ability users, Yize had once encountered one who was the opposite. That person's ability could only store living things, while inanimate objects could not enter the space. Most spatial ability users likely only used their ability space for storage, but a few possessed offensive capabilities. Yize was one of them. In his past life, during the decades when he was crippled, all Yize could do was study the ability day after day. No one understood better than him how to utilize an ability. From the moment he found the little zombie, Yize had planned to stockpile supplies. Zombies needed to consume flesh and blood. In the later stages of the apocalypse, as zombie levels increased, they would gradually regain human perception. Some even speculated that when zombies reached a certain level, they would also recover their human memories. He did not want his zombie, upon regaining her memories, to have the disgusting experience of having eaten human flesh. Without a second thought, he withdrew all the funds from his account and purchased the first batch of fresh meat. Fortunately, his space had time stasis, so even long storage would not cause spoilage. To avoid drawing attention, Yize specifically conducted large-scale purchases nationwide. Besides meat, eggs and dairy, grains, oil, water, and salt were equally indispensable. After depleting all his available cash, Yize still felt that he did not have enough. His ability space was not large, only 500 square meters with a height of 5 meters, and this was even after he had cultivated his ability. After storing all the supplies into his space, Yize sat by the bed and began to cultivate. During the 10 years he was crippled, he had discovered that abilities could be cultivated not solely by absorbing zombie cores. He had also verified on the little zombie that zombies could not follow the human cultivation method for leveling up. However, soon a ringtone interrupted Yize's train of thought. Yize opened his eyes and saw the name Chui Ming appear on his phone. A flash of ruthlessness passed through his eyes. Chui Yingying and Chui Ming were truly father and daughter, equally nauseating to the core. In the past, he had sincerely respected this former benefactor, even treating him like a biological father and honoring him. But in the end, this man had stabbed him in the back after his downfall, selling him out to Dong Hong and aligning with the new power without hesitation. Yize was vengeful. Since he had been reborn, he would not let a single traitor go unpunished. When he answered the phone, Chui Ming's hypocritical voice came through. "Yize, Uncle Chui heard you were discharged from the hospital. Are you alright? Why not stay in the hospital for a couple more days? Yingying is really being a child again, insisting that you bullied her. Please be more tolerant. She's been spoiled since childhood, and you know I only have this one daughter. Is there something?" Yize replied coldly. Chui Ming did not sense anything amiss. After all, Yize was simply that kind of person, cold on the surface, but once someone showed him kindness, he would give his heart and soul. Such individuals were the easiest to manipulate. "It's nothing serious, Yize. Looking Ying is just a girl, and she ended up with a scar on her belly because of you. I've told her countless times to just treat you like a brother, but who would have thought this girl is so stubborn? She's been chasing after you for years, and now she's even willing to throw away her life for you. We've watched you grow up, both Ying's mother and I. We trust you completely. The two of you have known each other since childhood, and you don't have a partner now. How about giving it a try? She genuinely loves you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the nerve to bring this up. In his past life, it was precisely because of these words that Yize agreed to be with Cui Ying. Yize could now guess most of their intentions. If the apocalypse hadn't struck so suddenly, the Cui family would likely have next aimed to take over his company and make it their own. Since they wanted it, Yize didn't mind tricking them into losing all their assets before the apocalypse. He was curious to see what would become of the Cui family without his protection. A flicker of cunning passed through Yize's deep eyes. Let's talk about that later. The company is in chaos now. I feel like this incident might be connected to someone in the company. I'm tired. I might just sell the company and take a good rest. As he spoke, Yize toyed with the little zombie's hair, casually setting a trap for them. Hearing this, Cui Ming's heart jolted. He quickly urged, Yize, don't be impulsive. How can you just sell the company? It's at the peak of its potential. Others would kill to buy, and why would you sell? Too much pressure. Too many people are watching, eager to tear a piece off me. It's meaningless. I don't want it. Cui Ming was fuming inside, dismissing it as a young man, unable to withstand hardship, scared off by the injury, and now wanting to hole up comfortably with a pile of cash. What a spineless coward. He had originally planned to marry his daughter to Yize, and then have him willingly hand over the company to the Cui family. Who would have thought this guy would want to sell the goose that laid the golden eggs? Cui Ming was mediocre as a person and even more so in business, but anyone with eyes could see that Yize's company was profitable and would be on an upward trend for the next decade. If he could buy it now, it would definitely be a gold mine. He initially thought Yize was joking, but to his surprise, after hanging up, Yize immediately spread the news. He was serious about selling the company. After doing this, Yize contacted a real estate agent and sold off all the villas and sports cars under his name, assets he had bought over the years to maintain appearances for his business. He then took out a loan from the bank. All these funds added up to barely over 100 million. With that money, Yize used his connections to purchase a batch of firearms and ammunition. Once everything was settled, Yize watched the news on TV, still covering the murder case of a student from. Yize was a senior at Z University. Due to his company's rapid growth, he had been invited to give a speech at his alma mater, but he had not expected to encounter this incident before the speech. The attacker who had assaulted them was already dead on the spot. Yize frowned, sensing something was off. The assailant had clearly mutated into a zombie carrying the initial zombie virus. Since it was a fully transformed zombie, the only way to kill it was to remove or shatter its crystal core. Otherwise, even if it was maimed or wounded, it could still move. Yize recalled the blurry memories before he lost consciousness. Aside from knowing someone had shielded him, he also noticed a distinct motion of stabbing the attacker's head with a knife. He looked suspiciously at Jiang Yue, who lay beside him with shackles locked around her. How did she know how to attack a zombie? What secrets did she hold? In the early stages, the zombie virus had a long incubation period, and infected individuals showed no symptoms. That was why the two girls who were also attacked at the time didn't react. It was only a month later, after the comet fell, that they mutated into the stereotypical zombies. Of course, there was another exception. If the infected person was dead, the zombification would gradually manifest within half a month, as was the case with Jiang Yu. For someone like Yize, who was burning with high fever, it was basically an awakening of superpowers. Those with no reaction would simply turn into zombies. Thus, in his past life, within a few months after the apocalypse began, Yize already knew that the person who saved him was definitely not Cui Ying. He was naturally resentful, but before he could confront them, he was betrayed. But now, putting aside the Cui family matter, Yize's face darkened as he hired a private investigator to look into Jiang Yu. He knew nothing about her past, and there was an alienating unfamiliarity. Before the private investigator could report back, Cui Ming called again. Yize had no patience for small talk. He answered the call and cut straight to the chase. 500 million. Non-negotiable. Without giving the other party a chance to respond, he hung up. Yize checked his superpower space and felt a sense of urgency. It was too small. Relatively speaking, it was far from enough. In the apocalypse, one could never have too many supplies. Additionally, drawing on his experience from his past life, Yize began searching for a safe location. He wanted to build an absolutely secure stronghold that would not be easily disturbed. In his previous life, he joined a base only to suffer betrayal and schemes, and was then captured and experimented on for 4 years to study his superpower. He loathed every single base with every fiber of his being. Not to mention, he was now accompanied by a zombie. No base would tolerate a dangerous zombie approaching. Initially, the Chui family wanted to use Chui Yingying as an excuse to get close to Yize again, but not only was Chui Yingying too terrified to agree, she refused outright. As for Yize, he was adamant about selling the company. Seeing that he was about to sell it to someone else at a low price, Chui Ming nearly ground his teeth to dust, cursing the kid for being a fool in his heart. But on second thought, it was only 500 million, which would be earned back quickly. Chui Ming decided to be bold. He not only took out all the family's savings, but also borrowed from others, and even mortgaged his own company. In the end, he scraped together the money and gritted his teeth to buy Yize's company. After handing over the company and receiving the payment, Yize was quite satisfied. He had deliberately left a few hidden traps for the Chui family. They wouldn't make any profit. In fact, they would probably lose a lot. With this money, Yize not only filled his superpower space with supplies, but also began constructing his safe house on an uninhabited mountainside. Using the mountain as cover, he concealed the entrance, built a massive water storage area and a storage zone, and set up dozens of generators to power the entire safe zone. Yize placed some long-term preserved food in the underground cold storage. Having these things, even if not perfect, was better than nothing. The only nearby danger was the possibility of plants mutating after the apocalypse, but this was both a hazard and the best camouflage. 10 days had passed since Yize woke up. During this time, Jiang Yu's appearance had fully zombified. The lowest tier zombies had no heartbeat, no breath, and apart from the urge to feed, they were no different from corpses. Yize had long grown accustomed to Jiang Yu's zombie form. No matter what she looked like, she was still her. In his past life, the two of them were wounded and crippled, forced to huddle in that cramped, dilapidated room. At first, Yize was wary and disgusted by her, but they had to endure being together in that tiny space. 10 years was enough for a habit to seep into the bone. More than once, Yize felt that his current house was too empty. Only when he held Jiang Yu in his arms did he find the familiar peace of mind. At night, the zombie that had been lying motionless on the bed suddenly snapped its eyes open. From pupils to whites, both eyes were completely consumed by pitch blackness. She opened her mouth, revealing fully formed teeth, and saliva began to drip. Her body and limbs shook the shackles, and she turned to lunge at Yize's neck, intending to tear off a chunk of flesh. The moment she bit into Yize's neck and tasted blood, the entire zombie was trapped in an embrace of searing heat, a pair of hands caressing the nape of her neck. Finally awake. A low-level zombie's mind held nothing but hunger. It could not understand human speech, nor could it comprehend the indescribable relief Yize felt at having regained what he had lost. After tasting a few drops of the Esper's blood, the zombie's pitch-black eyes shimmered with a bloody tinge, her mind consumed by a single thought. Devour him, devour him, devour him. The zombie jerked her head up, opening her blood-stained mouth, eager to feast and tear him apart. But Yize denied her the chance, using his ability to block her attack. She tried several times with her mouth agape, failing each time, and began to rage, struggling against the restraints on her hands. A low growl rumbled from her throat, her jet-black eyes fixed unblinkingly on Yize. He touched the bite on his neck and let out a soft laugh. Fortunately, he was an awakened Esper, so even a bite would not turn him into a zombie. Otherwise, he would never have let this zombie bite him. But this freshly turned Jiang Yu was far more ferocious than when they first met in his past life. He wondered how she had managed before they met in her previous life. Yize retrieved raw meat and blood from his spatial storage. Zombies needed large amounts of fresh meat and blood to quell their ravenous hunger. Jiang Yu still thrashed, attempting to escape the handcuffs and leg chains. Bereft of reason, she lunged at Yize again and again, driven solely by the instinct to feed. Yet blocked by his ability, she could only gnash her teeth against him. Not even a trace of blood could she get. Long black sharp claws had grown from her fingertips, natural weapons for tearing. After repeated violent struggles failed to free her, the furious zombie shook the bed with a grating noise. The commotion was so loud that someone downstairs opened the window and yelled, "Can't you make any less noise up there? Going at it so hard, aren't you afraid of throwing your back out? Damn, having a girlfriend is something special, huh?" Since the safe house halfway up the mountain was not yet complete, Yize was still living in his only remaining small apartment, leading to this misunderstanding. In his unusually light-hearted mood, a rare hint of mirth flickered in Yize's eyes. He took out prepared raw meat and stuffed it into the ravenous zombie's mouth. The moment something filled her mouth, the frenzied zombie froze as if time had stopped. Slowly she began to chew. Taking advantage of the pause, Yize examined her wrists. Zombies felt no pain, only hunger, so she had exerted tremendous force trying to break the restraints. Had Yize not offered the meat, this zombie would have continued attacking him relentlessly, even if it meant tearing off her own arms and legs. Her numbed shell held no soul, only the urge to feed. To prevent her from escaping and devouring people, Yize had specially crafted a bed and restraints. He locked the untamable zombie to the bed, chaining her hands to the headboard and securing her feet, with heavy shackles to the foot of the bed ensuring she could not escape. But now seeing her wrists rubbed raw and bleeding from the violent friction against the shackles, the livid flesh glittering before his eyes, Yize felt a pang of pain. In that instant, he slowed his feeding, delaying the zombie's meal. She immediately turned and lunged at his neck again. She felt so hungry, so famished, and the man before her exuded an enticing aroma. If only she could devour him. Yize snapped back to reality, took a piece of bloodied beef from his spatial storage, and fed it to her. She seemed satisfied this time, at least too occupied to bite him. Seizing the moment, Yize wrapped soft cloth around her wrists and ankles, performing a simple bandage. From his past life, he knew that higher-level zombies healed faster. He wondered how quickly a freshly turned zombie could recover, and the sight of the wounds on her wrists and ankles stung his eyes. A zombie knew only hunger, not satiety. To prevent her from rupturing her stomach, Yize carefully controlled the amount of food. Strangely enough, the wound on her abdomen had already healed, leaving no visible problem, except that the skin remained black at the injury site, while the rest of her body was livid. In his past life, when he first met the little zombie, her entire body was covered in blackish green. Now he understood that she had been riddled with injuries back then. Zombies knew no fullness. Without food, she snapped at Yize again. Even after eating meat, she still found him the most tantalizing morsel. But before she could bite down, a muzzle was fastened over her mouth. The open-mouthed zombie's hollow eyes flickered with a moment of confusion. Unable to attack with her mouth and unable to seize anyone to bite, she could only use Yize as a chew toy. Zombies did not become putrid and decayed immediately upon turning. Rather, if injuries went untreated, their healing could not keep pace with the damage. Coupled with their single-minded pursuit of food, their bodies gradually deteriorated, rotten flesh sloughing off, maggots breeding in matted hair until they exuded an odor of decay. Yet at this moment, despite her pale skin, black eyes, and darkened nails, Jiangyu remained undeniably beautiful, a strange raw allure in her greenish state. To apply medicine on her injuries, Yize unlocked the restraints on her wrists and ankles. Just as he rose to fetch the salve, the freed Jiangyu pounced on him, pinning him to the bed. Jiangyu was of average height, around 1.65 meters, but her build contrasted sharply with her innocent face. She pinned him down and bent to bite. His neck was constantly grazed, sending tingling sensations. Yize's eyes darkened, his atoms apple bobbing. To him it felt less like feeding and more like an ethereal temptation. During their decade together in the past life, Yize had been completely crippled below the waist, feeling nothing. After his rebirth, he had been too busy stockpiling supplies to pay attention to such matters. Only at this moment did Yize clearly feel that they were both still alive. Yize froze in place. The zombie, having exhausted its patience, angrily reached out to tear apart the thing blocking her mouth from feeding. Fearing she might hurt herself, Yize regained his senses, grabbed her hand, and suppressed his sudden impulse. He was not a pervert, nor was he that desperate. Had it not been for the decade-long emotional foundation, he would not have had that momentary daze. Yize held her waist, creating distance between them. After a brief moment to compose himself, he gazed at the highly energetic zombie with a complex expression. Zombies were highly energetic at night, so Yize had to use his ability to force this excessively vigorous zombie into dormancy. During the day, the zombie's energy waned significantly, and her restless movements quieted considerably. Yize fed her the prepared raw meat, and she ate peacefully. Yize could not bear to leave her a zombie alone at home. Therefore, he deliberately carved out a space exclusively for her within his own space, and placed her there. Fortunately, a zombie was not a living creature and could enter his space. Yize could sense her presence at any time. The food and toys prepared for her in the space were accessible to her at will, and Yize had carefully controlled the portions so as not to burst her stomach. When he entered the elevator on the ground floor, a slightly chubby otaku got in one floor below him. The man looked at Yize's neck with an ambiguous gaze, raised his eyebrows lecherously, and said enviously, "Bro, you and your girlfriend were pretty rough, huh?" Yize's neck had been bitten and bled by Jiangyu yesterday more than once, but today it had healed to only a faint mark. Yize, standing 186 centimeters tall with a cold face and firm muscles, did indeed look incongruous with the ring of bite marks on his neck. Yize was not a warm person and had originally intended to ignore him, but upon hearing the words girlfriend from his mouth, he cast a glance at him. It was precisely that glance that allowed Yize to discern something unusual. Fever. Hearing this, the chubby guy immediately perked up. "Yeah, I've had a fever for 3 straight days. I almost died alone at home. Yesterday I was groggy, but your noise woke me up, so I couldn't help yelling upstairs. Bro, don't mind me, huh?" Yize noticed that the chubby guy's stance put most of his weight on his right leg. Looking at his left leg, he casually asked, "Bitten?" The chubby guy widened his eyes, rolled up his pant leg to reveal a leg with a huge bite mark. "Holy crap. Bro, you can tell fortunes too. I was only chased and bitten by a crazy dog a few days ago. How did you know?" Looking at the blackening wound on the chubby guy's leg, Yize calmly withdrew his gaze. Just a guess. Once shown some concern, the chubby guy started babbling incessantly, his chatterbox nature bursting forth. Let me tell you, I'm so unlucky. I just went out to throw away trash and ran into this. I suspect I might have rabies, having been feverish for so long. Originally, I wanted to go to the hospital that same day for a checkup, but I fainted from anger or fright. I don't know which. When I woke up, there were no people to be found, not even the dog. It made me so mad. I have nowhere to seek justice. I forced myself to go home and get my ID, but then I collapsed at home and didn't wake up for several days. It was only yesterday that your and your girlfriend's noise woke me up, scaring me into a cold sweat. I quickly made an appointment and am going to the hospital today. Yize glanced at the chubby guy's condition. He was probably in the early stage of ability awakening, nothing major. However, his body was still in a weak period, and it would probably take another 10 days or half a month for his body to adapt to the ability. I wonder if it's because I didn't choose a good floor. I bought the 18th floor because of the cheap price. If I had listened to my parents, I would have picked an auspicious number. The chubby guy kept muttering incessantly, his chatter grating on the nerves. Fortunately, the elevator finally reached the bottom, sparing Yize's ears from further torture. The two stepped out of the elevator. Seeing that Yize hadn't driven, the chubby guy asked curiously, "Hey bro, where are you going?" "I called a taxi. If it's on the way, want a ride?" "Thanks, but no." Yize didn't intend to have too much involvement with others. The chubby guy didn't feel embarrassed by the refusal. Instead, he cheerfully teased, "Alright, I thought you were in a hurry to go to the mall to buy a ring and propose." "I was thinking the mall is pretty close to the hospital." Yize's footsteps paused. The chubby guy behind him looked astonished. "Damn it, could it be that I hit the mark? My mouth is blessed." Which single guy would rush to eat dog food? Rings, neither edible, nor drinkable, nor capable of providing abilities. From the perspective of Yize, who had survived the apocalypse for 15 years, there was nothing more useless than such ornaments. If that was the case for humans, how much more so for that ignorant zombie? Half an hour later, Yize stood before a display case looking at several pairs of wedding rings laid out in front of him. He felt that he must be sick. Such a small ring wasn't even enough for the little zombie to gnaw on in one bite. Yize glanced at the zombie resting peacefully in the space, then withdrew his spiritual sense and looked at the display case. The saleswoman enthusiastically pitched, describing each pair of rings as extraordinarily meaningful. Choosing rings alone was quite boring. Yize selected a few pairs that caught his eye, intending to let his zombie draw lots at home. Whichever she grabbed, they would wear. Having received a large order all at once, the saleswoman grinned from ear to ear. Even though she never got much response, she kept spewing flattering words. "Yize." A vaguely familiar voice came from behind. Yize turned around and saw two unfamiliar women standing not far away. "Why are you buying rings alone?" "Having regrets." "Want to pursue Ying again?" The woman approached with a forced familiarity, though her eyes couldn't hide the contempt. "Want us to give you some recommendations? We know Ying's preferences better than anyone, so you won't be rejected too badly, right?" Another girl chimed in with a smile, casting a critical glance at the jewelry. "Yize, you're picking these cheap things. Didn't you just get a sum of money from Uncle Chui? If you ask me, buying a ring is no substitute for showing sincerity. Return that money to Uncle Chui, and maybe Ying will consider marrying you. But I heard you used that money to buy a bunch of junk. What are you planning to go back to the countryside and farm again?" "Finally recognized your place." The two laughed together. Everyone knew that Chui Ying had a fiancée from a poor rural family who was desperately clinging to her. Uncle Chui, taking pity on him, sponsored his education and even helped him set up a company. But who would have guessed they'd raise an ungrateful wolf who ended up swindling the Chui family out of a sum? They thought he was up to something important, but it turned out he just bought some grain. Small-minded people are so ignorant, it's embarrassing. Yize recognized them as Chui Ying's friends, and indeed they were just as foolish. Yize frowned in disgust, feeling it was bad luck. Seeing that Yize ignored them, they assumed he was guilty. One of them immediately threw a diva tantrum. "Get the situation straight. You're the one proposing, and you need our help. You'd better have a better attitude." "Psycho." Yize turned to leave. Finding the two still angrily trying to pester him, he directly knocked them out with a spatial blade. Instantly, the world became much quieter. If his ability level weren't still too weak, Yize wouldn't have minded making them permanently quiet. The two suddenly fainted. The salesgirl was startled and immediately called an ambulance, as trouble in the store would be a hassle for her. However, she didn't have much fondness for these two women either. They were notorious for looking down on ordinary people and often hurled insults. Now perhaps they were just getting their comeuppance and had fainted from anger. Yize paid no heed to the matter of those two idiots. After equipping the safe house with basic facilities, he finally released the zombie that had been confined in the space for a day. He had also built a bedroom for them in the safe house. Presumably bored of confinement, the zombie moved with a flicker incredibly fast, leaving after images. Her black inch-longer fingernails shot straight toward Yize's heart. Yize grabbed the zombie's wrist, twisted her arm behind her back, and turned her around. The zombie twisted her head to bite, but was blocked by the dental guard on her mouth. Seizing the moment, Yize swept his leg, knocking the zombie to the ground. He then promptly pulled out modified shackles from his space and bound her hands and feet. The zombie struggled, straining the chains taut, but lacked the strength to break the specially treated shackles. After some effort to restrain the zombie, Yize finally had a moment to notice that the black dress he had put on her earlier was torn. Partly covered her waist-length hair cascaded down with a trace of blood on her head, presumably splattered while eating in the space. Yize stepped forward, looking at the zombie with hollow pitch-black eyes. He bent down, grabbed her hand, and with a hint of aggression and indisputability said, "You provoked me first. You confessed first. Now choose a ring you like, and I'll put it on you." As soon as the words were spoken, dozens of ring boxes fell from the space. The conspicuous red color and the noise of the boxes dropping triggered the zombie's instinct to attack, instantly puncturing one of the boxes. The 2 rings from the box dropped into Yize's steady hands. He opened his palm, looked at them, and chuckled, "Good taste." A plain silver band ring, Yize slipped onto the ring finger of his left hand, a rare tenderness showing in his eyes. He looked up at the zombie, still growling but oblivious, and felt as if he had effortlessly tricked a silly wife. Yize pinched the other ring, glanced at the little zombie's blood-covered claws, and thought, "Forget it. If I put it on her hand, it might end up lodged in someone's chest one day." After all, the most commonly used attack tools for zombies were their claws and teeth. Yize had practically cleared out the supermarket, so his space contained everything. He took out a black string necklace, threaded the ring onto it, and stepped forward to put it on her. The zombie cared little about what was added or removed from her body. A simple string around the neck was nothing compared to the excitement of a piece of meat. But before she could get any meat, Yize scooped her up. In a good mood, he looked down at the zombie's tattered black slip dress and chuckled, "Taking advantage of my own wife doesn't count as perversion. Here in the safe house, it was more convenient than at home. No matter how loud the noise, it wouldn't disturb others." Yize carried the still attacking zombie into the bathroom just in time to test the bathroom's functionality. Yize carried the zombie into the bathroom, where there was a bathtub big enough for 2 people. However, he wasn't sure if zombies were like pets, at least this one of his really disliked water. It kept struggling, splashing water until both were drenched. Yize looked at the zombie before him. Her shapely figure was covered by thin clothing, her long legs submerged in water. Apart from her slightly bluish skin, she wasn't much different from a normal person. Yize was just over 20, in the prime of youthful vigor. Yet the zombie trapped in his arms had no such awareness and kept thrashing in the water. He didn't intend to do anything. Before Jiangyu regained her senses, he had no plans to take things further. However, he had long since claimed this zombie and had no intention of letting go. The man and the zombie sat together in the bathtub. Yize held the zombie, who was trying to escape as water flowed from the shower head. The zombie, startled, wanted to flee, but the person behind her bound her hands with one hand. The shower water soaked both their hair. Droplets falling on a normal person would probably make it hard to keep their eyes open. Yet this zombie stared straight ahead with wide eyes, baring her teeth. However, perhaps due to the mist, her dark eyes appeared slightly hazy, making her look somewhat obedient. For a moment, Yize felt as if he had returned to his past life, when the 2 of them had relied on each other. Back then, Jiangyu had already become a high-level zombie possessing consciousness and sanity. In those days, she often showed human-like emotions. The memories of his past life slightly overlapped with this one, leaving Yize slightly dazed. Seizing the moment when he was distracted, Jiangyu lunged at him like a predator, slashing Yize's arm with her claws. However, there was no gushing blood, as one might expect. "Be good." Yize sighed helplessly at her, not angered by the small wound on his arm. To him, it was nothing. After awakening their abilities, superpowered individuals constantly tempered their bodies. Thus, even if bitten by a zombie, they would not be infected with the zombie virus. Simply put, supernatural abilities were also one of the virus selection outcomes. The mindless zombie before him had only predatory instincts, but at this moment, she also showed a trace of confusion, probably unable to understand why the food was so thick-skinned and tough. Just as she was about to continue struggling with the food, Yize didn't give her the chance. He pressed her down onto the bathtub. "All right, stop fussing. Let me give you a bath." Yize had spent a fortune purchasing supplies, nearly emptying the entire mall. He had also bought no small number of clothes suitable for Jiangyu. But Yize hadn't expected to reach a point where he had to be a saint, bathing her while unable to do anything else. Oh well. Pressing the zombie down in the bathtub, her wet hair cascaded over her back. Every part of Jiangyu fit Yize's aesthetic preferences. The lines of her back were soft and well-proportioned, extending from her shoulders to her waist without an ounce of excess flesh. At that moment, Jiangyu was pressed against the edge of the bathtub, her entire back forced straight. Her hands were tightly grasped and pressed against her back, but as a result, the two dimples on her lower back were especially prominent. In his past life, Yize had been paralyzed for over a decade. He had thought his feelings for this zombie were merely spiritual affection, but now it seemed. Yize laughed at himself. I've truly become a modern-day Lu Xiaowei. Holding the zombie still, he washed her hair, applying shampoo as the foam dripped down with gravity. The zombie didn't close her eyes. They stared unblinkingly at Yize, filled only with predatory greed. Yize reached out to cover her eyes and sped up the washing process. But this zombie was uncooperative. She tensed up, trying to raise her head to take a bite out of his neck. Zombies typically used only two parts as weapons: their hands and their mouths. At that moment, Jiangyu's hands were bound and unable to move, so the only thing that could move was her mouth. But her movement was quickly blocked as Yize gripped her chin and lifted her head, meeting his deep and complex dark eyes. Zombies had a keen sense of danger. Although she didn't know what the situation was, Jiangyu clearly sensed a threat, feeling as if the food before her also wanted to devour her. Jiangyu felt her chin being pinched painfully. Just as she thought her jaw would be crushed and she would become the man's food, Yize released his grip. He quickly finished bathing Jiangyu. After washing her, he temporarily put her back into his own space, and only then did Yize take a cold shower for himself. He figured if this happened many times, he would end up frustrated. After the cold shower and a while of standing in the cold wind, Yize gradually calmed down. He released the zombie from the space. He had already dressed her beforehand. Afraid she might accidentally expose herself, Yize had changed her into a white sportswear set. Oh, and of course he had a bit of selfishness, wearing a matching couple outfit to show off their connection. Come here. Yize had just discovered something. As long as he used his ability to make the zombie feel a sense of crisis, then gave orders, the zombie would become much more obedient. Perhaps this zombie he kept was one of the smarter ones. That made sense. Later on, she would awaken a psychic-type ability, so it was normal for her to be more perceptive than other zombies. Upon hearing Yize's command, although the zombie extended her claws and bared her teeth to attack, after another intensification of his ability, she slowly moved to Yize's side. Yize pulled the zombie to sit beside him and took out a hairdryer to blow-dry her hair. It was clear that his motions were very clumsy. In his past life, at the beginning, he was paralyzed and useless. It was mostly the zombie who took care of him. Now, in both lifetimes combined, it was the first time he had cared for someone like this. Oh no, cared for a zombie. His fingers ran through her soft hair. In the view where the zombie's back was turned and she couldn't see, Yize's gaze was steeped in tenderness. After spending a night in the safe house, both Yize and the little zombie spirits had improved considerably. After all, with no one to disturb them here and no food temptations luring the zombie, she had no choice but to settle down and obediently eat meat. Yize glanced at the date, September 7th, 2024. At this moment, there were only 7 days left until the comet fell and the apocalypse officially erupted. During this period, there had already been signs of the approaching doomsday. Temperatures in many regions had soared to 60 degrees Celsius, with persistent subtropical high pressure preventing coastal areas from cooling down. Typhoons kept brewing and strengthening at sea. Surface temperatures continued to rise. Tectonic movements intensified, and by now quite a few zombies had already appeared. The zombie virus had long been spreading among the population, or it only needed the spark of the comet's impact to ignite it completely. By then, the entire world would be utterly overturned and human history would be rewritten from that point on. The zombie virus divided people into 3 categories. The first category were the supernaturally gifted, whose genes evolved, granting them extraordinary abilities. The second were those infected by the zombie virus, whose evolution failed, turning them into ordinary zombies. And the third were ordinary people who had not yet been infected or evolved. In his past life, Yize had been used as a test subject for ability research, and for the following decade he constantly tinkered with his dwindling ability core. It could be said that at present no one in this world understood supernatural abilities better than he did. After the apocalypse erupted, humanity split into several factions, with various bases establishing their own domains. Excluding the smaller bases, there were 3 major human forces forming a tripartite stalemate. Among them, the Beisha base, situated in the frigid northern region, was renowned for its formidable strength regardless of gender. Even ordinary people who hadn't awakened abilities could still slay zombies with their martial prowess. Another force, the Sia base, revered supernatural power and believed that the zombie virus outbreak was a test of survival of the fittest for humanity. Because of their ideology, the population under their jurisdiction plummeted drastically, and the remaining people were clearly divided into 2 groups: ability users and the slaves who served them. They revered martial might. Whoever had the strongest ability could become the base leader, and there was no shortage of slaughter and plunder. In the later stages, when population became scarce, they used exorbitant benefits to tempt ability users from other bases, large or small, to join them. Apart from these two bases, the remaining one was the Donggu base, a major power located in the east. With the belief in human coexistence, they maintained a balance between ability users and ordinary people to a certain extent, while continuously researching how to turn those infected with the zombie virus back to normal. In his past life, when the apocalypse just began, Yize had no choice but to join the nearest small base. So insignificant, it wasn't even counted among the eastern bases. However, in order to establish connections with the Donggu base, Dong Hong had been trying to make breakthroughs in ability research, and Yize was his best test subject. Now that he was given a second chance without the burden of Cui Yingying's family, and having built a safe house ahead of time, Yize did not intend to rejoin that former small base. No, to put it another way, he was more interested in destroying that base. In fact, for humanity, mutated zombies were probably the easiest enemies to deal with in the apocalypse. What truly made the end times difficult were the mutated plants, animals, and creatures from the deep sea. Just like an ant that could be easily crushed before the apocalypse, in the end times humans might be nothing more than a morsel in its jaws, not even enough to satisfy its hunger. Even a blade of grass that could once be trampled underfoot would now grow 100-fold or 1,000-fold stimulated, then twist around a person, devour them, and turn them into its nourishment. Plants and animals ate humans, and zombies as zombies ate humans, humans ate mutated plants and animals. In the end, the apocalypse was a world where everyone devoured everyone else. Yize reflected that during this time he still needed to purchase enough supplies and weapons, both cold weapons and firearms, to be prepared for any special circumstances. However, a text message soon interrupted Yize's thoughts. He glanced at it, initially assuming it was from Cui Yingying's family, whom he had blocked, but then noticed it was from the private detective he had hired. Jiang Yu's information, someone must have tampered with it. I spent some time decrypting part of it, but I can't do anything about the rest. Yize once again confirmed the unease in his heart. At that time, when he was half-conscious, Jiang Yu had indeed destroyed the crystal core inside the zombie's brain. So she must have known about the zombie mutation back then. Who exactly was Jiang Yu? Jiang Yu, sensing Yize's stare, instinctively made a defensive move, yet was ready at any moment to pounce on her prey and bite. But before she could act, Yize used his ability to trap her in place. Jiang Yu was indeed smarter than an ordinary zombie. Especially after consuming so much flesh recently, she had learned to assess the situation, unlike at the start. At least after Yize used his ability, she knew enough to stop attacking. Come here. Look at your information. According to Yize's understanding of zombies, there should be a hierarchy among them. Clever zombies would choose to obey higher-ranking ones in order to ensure their own survival. And Jiang Yu's future ability was psychic. Probably influenced by this, she was far more intelligent than an average zombie. Upon hearing the command of someone stronger like Yize, she would also retract her claws and choose obedience. But most likely she was thinking about how to ambush him. However, Yize didn't care. After trapping the zombie in his arms, he opened the documents in his hand. Jiang Yu, age 19, birthday, September 21st. Seeing her age, Yize raised an eyebrow. Not bad. At least she was an adult. Now calculating her birthday, seemed to be approaching soon. Yize pondered what to give her at that time. But none of that was urgent now. He cleared his mind and continued reading. From the capital, only child, parents, occupations, unknown family assets in the hundreds of millions, no romantic history, no ambiguous relationships. Yize looked at the zombie in his arms who was trying to sneakily bite his hand. A rich young lady who had never suffered hardship before the apocalypse. Who could have imagined that after the apocalypse, she would break her arms and legs for someone like him, live in a basement that occasionally leaked rain, and be constantly attacked by mutant beasts? Yize scanned through Jiang Yu's brief information word by word. After reading it, he still basically didn't know her real situation, but it didn't matter. Seeing her constantly sniffing his hand, saliva dripping, Yize held the zombie in his arms. Taking advantage of this moment, the zombie bit down on Yize's hand. Yize didn't even flinch. If he hadn't allowed it, how could he have removed her muzzle and let her bite? Holding the zombie in his arms, his gaze was obsessive and dangerous. In this life, no one will be able to hurt you again. There was still a week before the apocalypse arrived. Yize took this opportunity to sell the house under his name, as real estate would become the most useless thing once the end times came. Because the price was low, the sale went quickly. Yize didn't even move his belongings out, and the buyer thought they had gotten a good deal. Yize was not particularly humane, but he wouldn't casually wrong innocent people. The man who bought his house was a classmate of his, now appearing honest and dull, yet he would push people into a zombie horde. In his past life, Yize's ability evolved, causing a high fever. After settling Cui Yingying's family, he forced his burning body to join others in searching for supplies. Unfortunately, they encountered a zombie swarm. While fleeing, this classmate pushed him into the horde, allowing himself to escape alive. Fearing exposure, he stole all remaining supplies early on and vanished. In his past life, luck let him escape. Lu Yize never saw him again, unable to even take revenge. Now reborn, how could he easily let him go? Lu Yize was vindictive. Having suffered once, he would not let it. He knew this classmate didn't have much money, so he graciously took whatever he had. He heard that to buy this house, the classmate even sold his rural family home. When his family came to see it, they tried to squeeze out every bit of advantage. Now his goal was to drain their savings, just as he did to Cui Yingying's family. He wanted to see how a destitute person would survive in the devouring apocalypse. After selling the house, Lu Yize used the money to buy more supplies. But by then, food prices had soared. Fires cannot be wrapped in paper, and zombies had started appearing in some areas. Those sharp enough had begun to sense something amiss, and a wave of hoarding swept the market. Pictures of zombies occasionally surfaced online, but were quickly censored or claimed by film crews to pass up. Just as Lu Yize was about to leave the neighborhood, a panicked voice called out, "Brother, brother, wait. Wait for me." Lu Yize turned around. The chubby man behind him looked familiar, but it was only due to the ability fluctuations emanating from him that Lu Yize recognized him as the fat man from the elevator. In just a few days, the fat man had lost a full circle, likely from the ability tempering his body and expelling impurities. Something wrong. No, it's just, brother, have you sensed anything strange? How should I put it? The chubby man wasn't stupid. He knew not to blurt everything out. But he had a gut feeling that this person was like him, perhaps because the other had instantly recognized his anomaly in the elevator. Lu Yize had severed all his previous relationships. In the apocalypse, all connections were trouble. He certainly wouldn't let a newly awakened ability user follow him. No. With that, he ignored the chubby man and walked away. The fat man scratched his head in confusion, feeling the world had become very odd. He dared not tell anyone that he seemed able to manipulate elements in the air. A few days ago, he woke up to find his entire bed drenched. Earlier, when he heard someone upstairs selling their house, he inexplicably got a rush and sold his as well. His intuition was strong, and he felt following that man was the right move. He even gritted his teeth and exchanged his million savings for food, sending most to his parents. With the remaining money, he bought a mountain bike and stuffed it with food. Though after doing all this, his parents nearly scolded him to death. At that moment, watching Lu Yize's retreating back, he decided to trust his intuition again. He trotted forward and called out, "Brother, wait. Let me show you something." After confirming no one else was around, he used his ability, a small droplet of water. Panicking, he asked, "Brother, do you know what this is? Is the apocalypse really coming like in the novels?" If it were any other ability, Lu Yize might have dismissed it, but a water-type ability made him pause. He fixed his gaze on the man for a few seconds. In the later stages of the apocalypse, water-type abilities became increasingly precious as drinkable water was constantly polluted, and only water ability users could provide clean water. He didn't care much, but he remembered that little zombie was a clean freak, constantly tidying up, even in the apocalypse's harsh conditions. Lu Yize weighed his options, and when he looked at the chubby man again, his eyes carried a hint of scrutiny. Truth be told, he hated water-type ability users the most. Thinking of how he and little zombie had been cornered by one in his past life, he ground his teeth in hatred. "Brother, don't stare at me like that. It's creeping me out. I've shown you my biggest secret. At least say something." The chubby man sure regretted being so impulsive. He feared this guy might report him to the authorities and have him taken for research. After much deliberation, Lu Yize decided not to bring a stranger back to his safe house. In the apocalypse, who knew what human nature would become? But he still kindly offered a word of advice: keep it hidden. With that, he left without looking back, leaving the chubby man feeling disappointed. After selling the house and transporting new supplies back to the safe house, he finally released Jiangyu from the... He did nothing much, just held her and watched the latest news together. The most pleasing piece was likely the news of Cui Corporation teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Cui Yingying's family had spent 500 million on an empty shell. They must be furious by now. Plus, the shell required constant spending, depleting their assets. Lu Yize regretted that his ability couldn't yet reach out and grab things from a distance. Otherwise he would have emptied the contents of the Cui family's safe. During this period, many tried to contact Lu Yize, but he unilaterally cut off all ties. Lianchong sent the most messages, starting with accusations of how he treated Cui Yingying, then cursing him for being heartless and ruining the Cui family, and finally choosing to break ties with him and accept Cui Yingying's favors. Lu Yize kept these people around as entertainment. Upon learning that in this life Cui Yingying had chosen to be with Lianchong, a playful smile curled on his lips. Lianchong was a person of whom Lu Yize actually had very little memory left. He only knew that there was such a person, a bit too much of a goody-goody. Not bad, but also foolishly kind. However, Lu Yize vaguely remembered that this person awakened an ability, then gained the favor of the daughter of a large base leader, and ended up with her having a daughter. In the apocalypse, it became increasingly difficult for ability users to bear offspring. And since both Lianchong and the base leader's daughter were ability users, them having a child together was extremely precious. That child was exceptionally gifted from birth, and thus consolidated Li Anchang's position in that base. Now he was curious, having chosen Shui Yingying, would Li Anchang still have smooth sailing like in his previous life? The zombie in his arms, unable to feed, struggled discontentedly, and it was her movements that snapped Lu Yize back to reality. Lu Yize stared blankly at the zombie before him for a moment, then a question occurred to him. So, is there reproductive isolation between zombies and humans? He had no intention of living a celibate life. Once this zombie reached a certain level and regained its sanity, he planned to engage in some adult activities with it. However, he didn't want children. Having grown up in an orphanage, Lu Yize absolutely detested kids. Those creatures who only use their young age to demand all the good things. He had neither the kindness nor the patience to raise them. He disliked these cubs that only tried to snatch away his possessions. So it was best if there was reproductive isolation between zombies and humans, so they wouldn't have children. The zombie before him had no idea what Lu Yize was thinking. She was now becoming restless and frequently looking up at the sky. Lu Yize, however, knew why she was like this. Because that comet was continuously approaching the blue star. On September 14, 2024, the comet broke through the ozone layer and kept falling. At the same time, people all over the blue star kept mutating on the spot, losing their minds and biting those around them. The plants on the blue star grew wildly, and creatures in the sea and animals on land mutated. The civilization built by humankind was continuously eroded. Radar and nuclear weapons were deployed in succession, but after use, people discovered that nuclear energy not only failed to suppress the mutations, but actually accelerated them. The zombie disease broke out, communications were cut off, water and electricity supplies stopped, order gradually collapsed, the land was devastated, and cities fell. But none of this concerned Lu Yize. He was currently in a safe house with the zombie, watching news from 3 days ago while outside had already turned into chaos. The safe house he had chosen was carved out from within a mountain surrounded by hundreds of mutated plants. He had made special preparations from the very beginning, specifically targeting these peculiar plants, rendering them unable to attack the safe house. Of course, the most important thing was that Lu Yize was stronger than these mutated plants. While they were still in the early stages of mutation, he was already about to step into the ranks of second-level ability users. He was one of the earliest awakened ability users, and possessing memories of his previous life, Lu Yize knew how to cultivate, a method that those in his past life would have given up a 4th-level zombie to obtain. For ordinary ability users to improve their abilities, besides absorbing zombie cores, they could consume mutated plants and animals to enhance their power. Or if lucky enough to encounter awakened mutated plants or animals, they could rise several levels in one go. Back then, they continuously experimented on Lu Yize, essentially trying to find a way for humans to upgrade their abilities on their own. After 4 years of research with no progress, it was Lu Yize, the subject of the experiments, who had his own insights. And over the next 10 years, through constant self-reflection, he figured out a method for upgrading abilities. Of course, this was also thanks to them shattering his ability core, which allowed Lu Yize to understand its structure. The ability core could shatter into at most 21 pieces, and within each fragment of the ability core was a star seed that no one but the person themselves could perceive. This was the key reason why their research failed. To improve one's ability was essentially a process of the ability core continuously accumulating power and achieving breakthroughs. The first step to improving ability was to find and perceive the existence of one's own ability core. Like that chubby kid earlier, he probably could only vaguely sense and use his ability, but he must have an ability core inside him. After being able to perceive the existence of the ability core, one should use the ability within the body to interact with the core, allowing it to gradually adapt. The third step was the hardest. One had to perceive the 21 components of the ability core, then link the star seeds within each fragment, and finally connect the 21 parts of the ability core with ability energy. For every level improvement, the number of stars in the star sea would increase exponentially. As for the advancement stages of zombies, they were different from ability users. Lu Yize had once tried this method on the little zombie, but unfortunately it ended in failure. Before he had a chance to study the zombie core, he was forced to self-destruct. Bang! Boom! The cage rattled with a harsh noise as the zombie shook it a meter away from Lu Yize. Turning his head, he saw Jiang Yuan, now fully zombified, and went over to check on her condition. And the moment he approached, a bloodthirsty glint flashed in Jiang Yu's pitch-black pupils. The faint shred of consciousness that had been painstakingly cultivated was now completely gone, as she was now consumed solely by the urge to feed. It seemed that this unknown comet had a huge impact on zombies. Having lived through the apocalypse for so many years, Lu Yize judged that her current state, barring surprises, indicated that her ability core was about to upgrade. The classification of zombies and ability users was different. During the apocalypse, people roughly divided ability users and zombies into 5 levels. For example, ordinary zombies and ordinary humans were both marked as LV0, As soon as one awakened as an ability user, they became LV-1A, and zombies with upgraded cores were also LV-1. Currently, Yize had completed the first stage of Star Sea Connection and was about to step into the LV-2 stage a full year earlier than in his previous life. As for Jiang Yue, having been raised for nearly a month under Yize's provision of ample flesh and blood, and with the added influence of the comet, she was now also approaching the LV-1 state. However, judging by Jiang Yu's current state, it seemed that relying solely on feeding was a bit slow for zombie advancement. Yize planned to take her out for a trip. Coincidentally, he also wanted to stock up on more supplies outside. He took Jiang Yu into the underground garage and drove out an off-road vehicle. Instead of putting the zombie into his space, he took out a helmet and put it on her. It wasn't that he was afraid of her being seen, he just worried that if he wasn't careful she might bite something dirty. He shackled the zombie in the passenger seat, and after ensuring she couldn't break free, Yize safely drove the car away from the safe house. Their current location was a mountainous area with scarce zombie footprints. However, after a few turns near the foot of the hill, the scent of blood grew significantly stronger. Some zombies even lunged at their vehicle. It was evident that the villagers had resisted, causing the zombies to be missing limbs. Yet the zombies' mouths were smeared with blood, suggesting they had already feasted. Yize glanced at the zombie beside him and noticed she was responding to the other zombies, seemingly eager to join them in feeding and attacking. This displeased Yize greatly, a gloom settling in his eyes. Just like in his past life, it would have been better if the two of them had only each other, rather than this, where she saw him only as food, and in her eyes those limbless zombies outside were her. Yize stepped on the accelerator, ramming the zombies aside. The wheels crushed one zombie's head, splattering brains across the window. He turned on the wipers and watched calmly as they cleaned the mess. Sensing the oppressive aura radiating from Yize, Jiang Yu let out a continuous low growl. Yet her actions became far more obedient as she no longer tried to leap out the window and join the zombie horde. Their vehicle stood out on the road, inevitably drawing the attention of many survivors. They scrambled toward the car as if it were their last lifeline, desperately pushing forward. One man even shoved aside the elderly women and children to reach the front. When he saw the car stop and that only a young man was inside, greed instantly flickered across his face. He wanted to take the vehicle for himself. "Little brother, give me a ride, please, have mercy. I won't cause any trouble. I have food here to trade. My wife and children are waiting for me." Just as the young man inside seemed about to be deceived, an elderly woman clutching a child shouted with hatred, "Young man, don't believe him. He's a beast. He used his own wife and daughter as shields against the zombies, and they died." Exposed, the man's face twisted savagely. If he couldn't get on the car, he wouldn't let this old hag off easy. But unexpectedly, before Yize could act, the zombie seated beside him in the passenger seat broke free of her restraints and lunged straight at the man. Her hands plunged into his heart. The man's face filled with terror. Because she was so close, even with her helmet on, he caught a glimpse of her appearance. Pitch-black eyes, fangs exposed outside her mouth. He looked down at the hands piercing his chest and the cyan-black skin on them. Zom. Before he could finish, the zombie showed no mercy. She twisted her hand, and in that instant the man lost his life. If not for the helmet on her head, she would have already started tearing into him. This sudden turn of events terrified the old woman nearby. She quickly covered the child's eyes, fear evident in her own. But Yize acted as if nothing had happened. He took Jiang Yu's hand, pulled her clothes, produced water from his space, and washed her hands, even saying, "Well done." He didn't even glance at the corpse on the ground. Just moments ago, he had noticed the man leering at Jiang Yu's curvaceous figure, and it was clear what filth was running through his mind. To Yize, that man was already dead. He had released Jiang Yu's shackles, curious to see what the little zombie would choose: flee, immediately pounce on him and devour him for nourishment, or kill that despicable beast with the filthy eyes. When Yize saw the little zombie unhesitatingly rip out the man's heart and offer no resistance, when he took her hand to wash it, he was very pleased. The moment they witnessed Jiang Yu's actions, the other survivors scattered in panic. Only the grandmother and her grandson were left trembling nearby, the child too frightened even to cry, as if they were facing some kind of tyrant. Yize didn't consider himself a good person, but he wasn't evil either. He wouldn't go out of his way to provoke strangers without reason. After cleaning the blood from Jiang Yu's hands, he opened the middle-aged man's backpack, confirmed it contained only food, and tossed it to the grandmother and grandson. They were stunned by this gesture, their faces shifting to a mix of disbelief and anxious joy. Thank you. Don't let others see. If you want to survive, head into the city." Yize offered that warning, but nothing more. He wasn't charitable enough to take strangers into the city. By now the government had probably opened a small safe zone within the city to protect the residents. If they remained in these deep mountains and forests, they would only meet their deaths. Entering the city was more difficult, but if luck was on their side and they managed to join the base, they might still live. Yize also killed a few zombies that kept approaching them, digging out the crystal cores from their brains. The crystal cores seemed to hold an immense allure for zombies. Even Jiang Yue, who lacked consciousness, stared at them unblinkingly. If not for Yize's ability suppressing her, she would have already snatched them. It wasn't that Yize begrudged her a few crystal cores, it was that he had just dug them out of zombie brains still covered in brain matter. He couldn't bring himself to feed such things to Jiang Yue. Yize used water from his space to clean the crystal cores. The process wasn't long, but the zombie beside him grew impatient. Just as she was about to act, Yize opened Jiang Yu's helmet and placed the repeatedly cleaned crystal core into her mouth. Jiang Yu was instantly calmed, quietly crunching on the crystal core. Watching her pulverize a core as hard as diamond into powder, Yize reached out and touched her teeth. A thought crossed his mind, and he spoke with an ambiguous smile. Quite the strong teeth. They'll have to be careful in the future, or you might bite me. The zombie didn't understand his words. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Yu would have bitten him, but now she was too immersed in the joy of devouring the crystal core to care about someone touching her teeth. Seeing that she no longer struggled, Yize put away the other 2 crystal cores. This time Jiang Yu followed him into the car, without needing to be forced, unlike before when he had to subdue her with his power. Crystal cores had such an effect. Yize thought he might kill more zombies along the way. The old woman who had earlier warned them watched Yize and his companion easily dispatch 3 zombies. After a moment of contemplation, she recalled his advice. She glanced back at the others. She picked up her little grandson, the only surviving member of their family. Her son and daughter-in-law had died protecting them, and at any moment they might turn into zombies. The grandmother looked at the child in her arms, gritted her teeth, and made a decision. Xiaobao, be good. Grandma is taking you to the city. The luck of this grandfather and grandson duo was quite good. Their route into the city overlapped with that of Yize and his companion. Throughout the journey, Yize did not miss a single zombie as he sought to collect as many zombie crystal cores as possible. They followed closely behind Yize, managing to enter the city safely, though the old grandmother was on edge, observing the corpses of zombies scattered along the way. Fortunately, they eventually encountered a large group entering the city, and they should be able to reach the temporary base inside the city safely. Having killed zombies along the way, Yize now found that the water in his space was nearly depleted. He had kept most of the water in the safe house, as storing water in the space was not a wise choice. He left a portion of drinkable water for emergencies. At that moment, he thought how convenient it would be if there were someone with water-based abilities by his side. However, this fleeting thought was quickly cast aside. Yize drove his car, bringing along the exceptionally well-behaved and quiet Jiang Yu to the nearest shopping mall. Inside the mall, chaos reigned with zombies everywhere. However, since it was the early days of the apocalypse, there were likely many survivors inside. But what did that have to do with him? Before they could exit the vehicle, they witnessed a grand spectacle. In places with a high concentration of people, the mall had also become a hotspot for zombies after the mutations. At that moment, a chubby boy was sprinting with a woman. Coincidentally, the woman being dragged along was none other than Yize's enemy from his past life, Yize. Yize did not get out of the car, nor did he make any move to help, watching as they struggled to climb onto a vehicle. The chubby boy was quite the gentleman, helping Yize onto the vehicle first. Just as he wanted her to pull him up, zombies had already surrounded them. Yize, being a selfish woman, did not care for the boy's life. Fearing he might cling to her, she let go of his hand, and even pushed him into the horde of zombies. The chubby boy, inexperienced in the ways of the apocalypse, did not anticipate such a development, and in his moment of shock, a zombie had already bitten into his shoulder. Meanwhile, Yize frantically climbed into the driver's seat, exclaiming, "You've already been infected by the zombies. 2 can't let you go back." After saying that, she drove off in a panic. Just before her car vanished from view, Yize instantly used his abilities to blow out a tire, causing Yize to scream in terror as zombies surrounded the entire vehicle. Seeing this, Yize withdrew his gaze, only to have the zombie that had been behaving obediently by his side suddenly leap from the car, rushing towards the group of zombies. Watching her retreating figure, Yize's heart surged with rage. Jiang Yu jumped out of the car, not for any other reason, but because she had caught a whiff of food. She dashed into the circle of zombies, eager to monopolize the food, emitting a different scent. The chubby boy noticed a girl squeezing into the circle. Thinking he was going to die anyway, he decided to save at least one person. He suddenly sprang up and grabbed one of the zombies, creating an opening in the circle. He turned to the girl wearing a strange helmet and shouted, "You need to get out of here. Don't worry about me, though I've already..." Jiang Yu was startled by his sudden voice, as she did not understand what the food was saying and only wanted to step forward and share the food like the zombies. Before she could act, she found herself trapped in place. Realizing it was the work of another food, she turned and shouted at the grim-faced Yize who was approaching. Had the chubby boy not been surrounded by zombies, he would have sensed her unusual demeanor. Yize was not a patient person. He could tolerate Jiang Yu for anything, but he would not allow her to leave. Yize's eyes were cold, devoid of warmth. The zombies in front of him sensed danger and tried to retreat, but their actions only infuriated Yize. By the time she realized what was happening, she found herself trapped in a room full of food. For a zombie whose only instinct was to feed, this was not a punishment, but a reward. Moreover, Yize had intentionally placed 3 zombie crystal cores in this room, which should keep this zombie dog. Yize originally did not wish to concern himself with the chubby boy's fate, but considering the slight kindness he had shown Zhang Yue, he did not mind putting in the effort to save his life. Yize approached the area where the zombies were gathered, gathering his abilities. In the next instant, the brains of these zombies were instantly severed from their bodies, the compressed pressure causing their brain matter to splatter. In an instant, Yize killed 5 low-level zombies surrounding the chubby boy, their remains falling to the ground and onto the boy himself. "It's you." The chubby boy thought he was doomed, but to his surprise he was saved. He recognized Yize as someone he had encountered a couple of times in the neighborhood. However, he quickly slumped back down. "You really have special abilities like me. But you should leave quickly. Oh, I've been bitten by a zombie, and who knows when I'll turn." After Yize collected the 5 zombie crystal cores scattered on the ground, he glanced at the battered and bruised boy lying there waiting to die. "You want die?" Upon hearing Yize's words, the chubby boy's eyes widened, urgently asking, Really? I want to turn into a zombie." "You want?" Although Yize's response was brief, it inexplicably carried a sense of conviction. The chubby boy, who had initially felt terrible all over, suddenly moved his limbs as if he truly had no inclination to die. Realizing he might survive, his expression changed instantly, his chubby face filled with rage. "That Cui Yingying. How dare she push me into a pile of zombies pretending to be all high and mighty? She's truly no good. If it weren't for Li N's face, who would want to bring her along?" As for Yize, he felt no particular way about the chubby boy's insults towards Cui Yingying. What mattered more to him were the 5 sticky brain matter-covered crystal cores in his hands. "Give me some water." His cold, emotionless words interrupted the chubby boy's incessant rambling. The boy scratched his head, looking perplexed. He locked eyes with Yize and uncertainly extended his hand, struggling to gather a drop of water, which fell onto the crystal core in Yize's hand. To be honest, if one's eyesight wasn't sharp, one might not even notice that single drop of water. The chubby boy scratched his head awkwardly. This really isn't my sweat. I don't know where it came from. It's probably just water from the air. Just wait a moment, I should be able to squeeze out another drop in 5 minutes. After such a long time, this person still hasn't made any progress at all. Fearing that Yize would despise him, the little fatty hurriedly cried and shouted, "Brother, I'll call you brother if that's what it takes, but don't abandon me. I eat little and work much. If worst comes to worst, you can use me as a faucet. I should be able to save half a bottle of water each day." Half a bottle of water. Yize wanted even more to abandon him. The stout man wept, wiping his tears and crying out, "I really don't want to go back. That Cui Yingying is a cunning woman who even tried to kill me. If I go back with her, who knows what nonsense she'll spin. Her boyfriend is also a dumb fool, a real pushover, but how can he just listen to Cui Yingying? I suspect he has a love-addled brain." As he spoke, the little fatty couldn't help shedding a few tears, and Yize roughly understood the situation from his words. After the apocalypse, a group of them happened to gather together. Lianshang led Cui Yingying's family in their escape, also gathered a few close young friends, and along the way took in several able-bodied men. This fat man was driving alone when he got blocked by zombies. Fortunately, he encountered this group, was rescued by them, and naturally joined their team, while also contributing his car for the team's use. He had originally not planned to share his food with the others, but Lianshang gave him some psychological counseling, emphasizing that they were a team and that a group of people could go further. Such bullshit. In the end, the food in little fatty's hands was distributed to everyone, but he himself kept a large portion. But food was limited after all, so everyone in the team had to take turns going out to search for supplies. As luck would have it, little fatty and Cui Yingying were assigned to the same team, and the area arranged for them was actually a relatively safe place. But Cui Yingying just couldn't resist asking for trouble. Seeing a shopping mall, she urged little fatty. Little fatty, though not smart, was not stupid either. He didn't want to go in, but Cui Yingying started whimpering, and her crying made little fatty afraid it would attract zombies. In the end, he had no choice but to reluctantly agree. However, he found that after entering the mall, Cui Yingying hid behind him the whole time. As a man, he didn't want to nitpick about this. But Cui Yingying not only didn't help, she kept being foolish. She picked up food in the mall, and on top of that, she also wanted to grab some high-end skincare products. Seeing this, little fatty gasped, feeling that this woman was simply insane. In the end, they were discovered by zombies because of her scream. Little fatty really had the urge to strangle her on the spot. As for what happened next, Yize had witnessed it himself. He had long experienced Cui Yingying's foolishness. Yize looked into the distance, noticing the direction where Cui Yingying had been surrounded by zombies. Lianshang and his men had arrived in time, so she probably still clung to her wretched life. Yize was not in a hurry to take her life yet, Without her, how could he lure out Dong Hong? Revenge should be taken all at once to truly satisfy. Yize concealed his inner calculations. He looked at a spot clearly only 2 kilometers away, but judging by the look of that group, they had no intention of coming for this fat man. Cui Yingying, who had just been rescued, was scared out of her wits. Upon seeing Lianchong, she immediately burst into tears and threw herself into his arms. Lianchong, who could become the captain of this small team, naturally had his outstanding qualities. He glanced at the car, immediately pulled Cui Yingying away, and asked with a frown, "Where is Xian Wenrui?" Upon hearing Lianchong mention that fat man, a trace of guilt flashed through Cui Yingying's eyes but she knew she must never let Lianchong know that she was the reason he died among the zombies, otherwise, given Lianchong's nature, he would never take care of her again. After figuring this out, Cui Yingying immediately cried and said, he was bitten by zombies. I wanted to protect him, but I failed. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Why did you deviate from the designated mission area? This has already exceeded your capabilities. Lianchong's tone was stern, and he was deeply pained by what Cui Yingying immediately burst into tears, because we found that this mall had few zombies and Xian Wenrui was young and very hungry, so we wanted to try our luck. I advised him, I really did. In the end, I was still worried and went along. I didn't expect something like this. The others had already softened seeing her cry like this. Moreover, Xian Wenrui hadn't been with them long, so relative to him, the others still believed Cui Yingying more. We know supplies are getting scarcer now. Seeing this mall, we wanted to go in. It's all my fault. I should have informed you earlier, and this wouldn't have happened. But we still loaded the stuff into the car. Anchang, tonight, everyone doesn't have to go hungry. Cui Yingying's words struck a chord with everyone present, but only Li Anchang, who managed the supplies, knew they actually weren't that short of supplies. Xian Wenrui had brought quite a lot of supplies, allowing them to last for a while. No, we still have to go back and check. Li Anchang had an overflowing sense of justice, otherwise he wouldn't have intervened when Yize had his hand around Cui Yingying's throat. Now that he learned Xian Wenrui was bitten by zombies because of the supply issue, he had to go back and take a look to confirm whether he was dead or alive. Go back? Of course not. Cui Yingying, while crying, suddenly fainted. Faced with this sudden turn of events, the people around started to persuade, since he's already been bitten, going back now would only cost another life. Forget it. Their minds were divided. Some had already set their sights on the remaining supplies that Xian Wenrui had left. Now that he couldn't come back, those things conveniently became theirs. Lianchong wavered repeatedly, but in the end had to give up and led Cui Yingying and the others back to their temporary shelter. Not far away, the fat man Xian Wenrui, who was nominally deceased, was now pleading with Yize with emotional reasoning to take him along. In the end, Yize let little fatty get into the car, certainly not out of compassion, but because of his somewhat decent attitude toward Jiang Yu just now. He reluctantly kept him, who still had some use. The little fatty, who was a bit dirty all over, followed Yize into the mall, changed into a clean set of clothes, and helped pack some supplies. But the supplies promptly vanished without a trace. He didn't dare ask where they went. He was not a meddlesome person and didn't pry into others' secrets, so he sensibly followed behind Yize. Finally, under Yize's arrangement, he carried several large boxes of supplies onto the off-road vehicle. After moving the things, the fat man with gratitude tried to open the passenger door, but found he couldn't. Go to the back. Isn't this inappropriate? Although little fatty was a shootin', he somewhat understood social etiquette. Sitting in the back seat of someone else's car, wouldn't that be rude? The other person wasn't a driver. Perhaps seeing his hesitation, Yize uncharacteristically explained, the passenger seat is taken. Yo! Xiaopeng instantly recalled the sound from upstairs before the apocalypse, slapping his forehead. Oh right, I almost forgot, bro. Lu, you have a girlfriend. By the way, did your proposal succeed last time? Where's the sister-in-law? Why haven't I seen her? Yize found this guy overly talkative, but when it came to Jiang Yue, he didn't mind responding. The proposal was successful. It's too dangerous outside, so I didn't let her come out. Xian Wenrui, noticing that the always cold Yize had deigned to reply, immediately seized the key point. He understood. So this icy bro Lu only wanted to talk about matters concerning his wife. I hope I can meet the sister-in-law someday. Anyone who could win you over must be extraordinary. Xian Wenrui scratched his hair, speaking with envy. He also longed for romance. After 20-something years single, and still a virgin, he feared that after 30, he would become a legendary wizard. Looking at the chubby guy fidgeting in the backseat, Yize decided not to tell him that he had just met the so-called sister-in-law, and that she was indeed not an ordinary person. Strictly speaking, not even human. Probably reminded by the mention of the sister-in-law, the fat guy thought of the girl who risked her life to save him. Bro Lu, by the way, did you see a girl when you came? She was completely different from Cui Yingying. She actually wanted to risk her life to save me. Could she have been harboring a secret crush on me all along? Yize glanced at him through the rearview mirror and sneered, feeling that just throwing him out of the car would be too kind. She is your sister-in-law. The atmosphere in the car instantly froze. Xian Wenrui's toes nearly curled the mat beneath him as he let out an awkward laugh. Ha ha ha, so that's the sister-in-law. Truly as kind-hearted as you, bro. So where is my sister-in-law? Where did she go? The fat guy looked around the car, but saw nothing. Suddenly his gaze fixed on the passenger seat, and he understood again. Oh, this must be the sister-in-law's special ability, right? Invisibility. No wonder she could suddenly appear and disappear. Xian Wenrui with newfound respect obsequiously greeted the passenger seat. Hello, sister-in-law. Wish you and bro Lu 100 years of harmony and a child soon. Yize looked at the rare idiot with disgust. Yet he didn't expose him. Only after they reached the safe house did Yize casually toss the supplies from the car to the fat guy and point to a decrepit old house outside. You can tidy it up yourself. Stay away from the main house, anything else is fine. But one warning, if you get close, these mutated plants nearby will take your life. Better behave. Xian Wenrui nodded fervently, tears of gratitude streaming. Okay. Just a place to sleep is enough. I can fix it up myself. Though he didn't know what method Yize used, Xian Wenrui noticed the place was extremely secluded and no zombies came to attack. Well, actually some did, but they all became fertilizer for those mutated plants. Yet what shocked Xian Wenrui even more was that the next moment a person materialized out of thin air. Yize removed the helmet that had been suffocating her all day, the one that made zombies recoil in frenzy, revealing her pale face and pitch-black eyes. Holy SHD! Xian Wenrui stumbled back. Catching the scent of food, the zombie lunged at him with a roar, and one misstep could cost him a chunk of flesh. Fortunately, Yize standing beside her restrained her attack range and handed her a clean zombie core to placate her. Be good. Don't act up. Xian Wenrui paled. He recognized this zombie. It was the girl he had mistaken for risking her life to save him, and she was even wearing matching clothes with his bro Lu. So she hadn't desperately rushed over to save him. She just wanted a bite of his flesh too. That realization stung. Xian Wenrui silently hugged his plump self. When he looked at Yize again, his eyes were complicated, his muddled mind churning with some bizarre theory. Before they entered the house, Xian Wenrui, with tears streaming and deep emotion, shouted, Bro Lu, you are a true man. Yize. Weirdo. But soon Yize couldn't spare attention for the fat guy because he noticed Jiang Yu was in a state of excessive agitation, alternating between elation and agony. She kept clawing at her own head. If Yize hadn't intervened in time, she might have torn through her entire face. After being subdued, Yize found her body burning with fever, which persisted unabated. Then, as if drained of all energy, she became utterly helpless. If she were outside, humans could easily have taken her life. Yize knew little about zombies and couldn't understand her condition, but he speculated it might be related to zombie evolution, just as when an Esper's power levels up, their body suffers from relentless fever. His lack of knowledge about Espers stemmed from the fact that in their past life together for 10 years, Jiang Yu had never shown any signs of advancement. High-level breakthroughs were difficult enough, but the fundamental reason was that she had given most of the cores to Yize. Yize carried Jiang Yu into the bathtub and held her from behind. The cold water soon turned scalding. He released into the tub all the cores he had gathered that day. At the appearance of the cores, Jiang Yu's pain eased slightly, but soon she became extremely restless, trying to scratch her own skin. Yet Yize pinned her hands down. Unable to satisfy her inner craving, she let out piercing, mournful. After a period of hyperactivity, she would lapse into weakness. This cycle repeated all night until the dozens of cores in the bathtub turned to powder. Only then did Jiang Yu's condition stabilize. She lay in Yize's arms with her eyes closed as if asleep. The greatest difference from a human was that she had no heartbeat or breath. After a night of torment, Yize's eyes were bloodshot and he looked haggard. He lifted Jiang Yu out of the... By then the high heat had dried them both. He lay down with Jiang Yu on the bed, wrapped them in the quilt, held her waist, and fell into a deep slumber with the zombie that had tormented him all night. That sleep was especially sweet. It wasn't until the next afternoon that Yize slowly awoke. Helping Jiang Yu advance the day before, Yize had to use his ability with extreme precision to control a rampaging zombie without harming her. That was why he had exhausted himself and slept until now. Upon waking, his first instinct was to worry that Jiang Yu might have escaped. Fortunately, he found the familiar body in his arms, and his jolting heart settled back into place. After awakening, he looked at Jiang Yu and noticed that her body had undergone changes following her advancement. The original bluish-black skin had lightened considerably, and the greenish hue was no longer prominent, instead taking on a jade-like grayish tone. The fangs that had been exposed had also retracted to the size of a normal person's teeth. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't notice her sharp canines. Before advancement, her nails were as black as half a finger's length, but now they had returned to the shape of ordinary human nails, merely coated with a layer resembling black nail polish. She was gradually becoming more like the little zombie he remembered. In his past life, the little zombie always appeared harmless and innocent before him, But after prolonged contact, he discovered that high-level zombies could conceal their zombified features, making them nearly indistinguishable from humans. Just like Jiang Yu at this moment, she hid her zombie fangs and sharp teeth in daily life, only revealing them. Perhaps it was Yize's overly intense gaze that caused Jiang Yu's eyelashes to tremble. She slowly regained consciousness and opened her eyes, still carrying a trace of bewilderment. She caught a very tantalizing scent that compelled her to approach it. What's wrong? Yize hadn't anticipated her actions when Jiang Yu slightly raised her head and reached out to him. Not until her cool lips touched the corner of his mouth, and she lightly bit down, tasting a hint of blood, did Yize freeze in place. The moment their lips met, a brilliant firework exploded across his cerebral cortex. In that instant, rationality burned and snapped. This was their first kiss in 10 years. All the past events and today's moments converged into an indescribable emotion surging within his heart. He reached out and pressed the back of Jiang Yu's neck, restraining her body, parting her lips with his tongue, and deepened the kiss. The zombie instincts warned Jiang Yu that she was in danger at this moment. Yet the taste of blood spreading in her mouth instinctively made her draw the crimson liquid inward. Yize's eyes darkened, a rare loss of control took over. He wrapped his arm around her waist, leaning down to deepen the kiss, wishing they could both drown in such tenderness. The blood of an evolved human exhilarated the zombie. Jiang Yu looped her arms around Yize's neck. Yize looked at the zombie beneath him. Aside from her pale skin, she differed little from a human. Her eyes were still misty with moisture, and the corners of her lips were stained red. Yize lowered his head again, his right hand cradling the back of her neck as he stroked her short hair, kissing her repeatedly to affirm her presence. Jiang Yu. Each time Yize uttered her name, images of their 10 years together flashed through his mind. From his initial hostility toward her to the deep affection he never recognized. But it wasn't until a sharp pain spread across his back that Yize sobered slightly. The zombie in his arms had clawed the food before her. In her eyes, Yize was nothing more than a top-tier delicacy, far superior to ordinary food, and nothing else. In that moment, Yize's heart felt as if drenched in cold water. Even though she had evolved into a level 1 zombie with outward changes, she still lacked human emotions. Yize seized her shoulders, blocking her escape. His eyes were deep and cold, carrying a sharp edge. The zombie could not interpret his expression, yet faintly sensed his loss of control, as if he were afraid of something. Jiang Yu bared her teeth and curled up defensively. Yize paused, then a smile spread across his face. Fear and vigilance. This was good. These were emotions a zombie should not possess. Earlier he had to use his ability to restrain the zombie's movements to stop her attack, but now she understood fear and could recognize danger. Yize pulled the zombie into his arms and sighed softly. It's okay, take your time. Let's take it slow. Jiang Yu looked up. Her eyes were completely black, no longer human-like, but when her eyeballs moved they lost some of the stiffness and lifelessness typical of zombies. If she hadn't realized that Yize posed a danger to her, she would likely have chosen to devour the fragrant food before her, just as she had done when she first awakened. What Yize didn't know was that the most noticeable change after a zombie's advancement was the restoration of the 5 senses. Jiang Yu could still feel a sting on her tongue. With her pea-sized brain, she couldn't understand why food would bite. Yet she was even more puzzled why, when she had a chance to bite off a chunk of the food's flesh, she couldn't bring herself to do it, as if something deep in her soul restrained her actions. The zombie widened her eyes. She was confused, bewildered. Yize looked down to see the zombie in his arms, dazedly pondering her existence. He curved his lips upward and reached into her mouth to place a crystal core. To Jiang Yu, the taste of the crystal core was second only to Yize, but a single piece was far from enough. She eyed Yize greedily, yet didn't act rashly. It's all gone. Yize shrugged and spread his hands, then pointed to the bathtub where only a pile of powder remained after the crystal cores had been fully absorbed. Jiang Yu tilted her head in confusion at his gesture. TCH. Yize suddenly realized that expecting a zombie with a brain the size of a soybean to understand that the crystal core had been digested was demanding too much of a zombie. After a zombie's advancement, besides enhanced abilities, its demand for food also skyrocketed as a way to provide energy for the body. Hunger drove them to forage. Jiang Yu was no exception. Yize had used up all the crystal cores on him, so he could only retrieve the meat he had previously stored in his spatial dimension. This meat had been preserved in the space. Though it couldn't compare to living humans in texture, or to crystal cores in energy, it could at least fill the stomach. Starved as she was, Jiang Yu didn't show any resistance. She tore into the meat, and Yize only watched from the side. But after she had devoured an amount equal to her own body weight, his gaze quietly settled on her slightly protruding belly. Anyone who didn't know would think she was carrying his child. Yize looked away, calmly thinking that before Jiang Yu regained her consciousness, he would at most collect a few perks. Yize withdrew his gaze and pondered a new issue. Previously feeling that food was plentiful, he hadn't worried much, but after the advancement, the zombie's food intake surged. It seemed feeding her only meat wouldn't suffice. They would still have to go out to hunt zombies and mine crystal core. After a night of struggle in the bathtub, neither of them could leave without a wash. But bathing, he glanced at the zombie, whose gaze was hollow after feeding, seemed to be quite a challenge again. Yize approached Jiang Yue, and the zombie emitted a low, intimidating growl like a beast that wouldn't let anyone near. He reached out, lifted Jiang Yue by the waist, weighed her. She was quite light. Placing the zombie into the bathtub, presumably, she still had memories of being bathed and immediately reacted with stress, scrambling to climb out. If she had a tail, it would likely be standing on end in fear. Don't move. We can't go out if we're not clean. Yize had been poor since childhood, rolling in mud, but after growing up and enduring hardships at school, he became particular about cleanliness. The zombie disliked water, but Yize didn't indulge her. He turned on the shower head, letting Jiang Yue thrash about beneath the spray. Still, this zombie had evolved, as she seemed to have grown a bit of brain. Last time she could only rage helplessly, but now she had learned to climb onto Yize to evade the water. Jiang Yue stood on tiptoe, arms encircling Yize's neck, her entire form pressed against him in fright, wet hair, dripping water. Although Jiang Yue wasn't heavy, she was well developed in the right places. Now pressed tightly against Yize, the curves of her chest were flattened, carrying an unintentional hint of intimacy. In their past life, they had spent 10 years together without ever being this close, because she had never dared. In the early days of their acquaintance, Yize's wariness and harsh words had hurt her. Thoughts of past life events weighed on Yize's heart. He held the zombie tightly to calm himself. When he released her, he had suppressed his surging emotions and met her gaze. She had been soaked in water. Yize worried she might catch a cold, though he wasn't sure if zombies could take off. The zombie probably didn't understand, showing no reaction. Yize had to do it himself. His fingers landed on the front of her clothes, touching her delicate collarbone. The zombie, unaware she was being taken advantage of, allowed his touch, but her every instinct was exposed as she searched for the best spot to bite. Yize sighed inwardly, pulled the zipper on her chest all the way up to cover her slender neck, exercising immense self-control to curb his primal urges. Take off your clothes, sit in the tub, and wash yourself. Yize's forceful words carried a hint of coercion. The zombie before him trembled sensitively, sensing fear. Even though she hated water, Jiang Yue, like the mutated plants outside, wisely chose to yield before a much stronger being who could easily dominate her. She obediently followed Yize's instructions, but how could a zombie know how to undress? Jiang Yue tugged at her shirt, growing increasingly frustrated. Just before she tore it apart, Yize covered her hand with his, holding her cold, delicate fingers. He'll teach you. Remember for next time. For the first time, the zombie learned to use a zipper. In the quiet bathroom, the sound of the zipper sliding down her top was unusually distinct, and what followed was the revealing of her magnificent chest. Then he guided her hand to her back, clumsily helping her undo the bra clasp. It was no wonder Yize wasn't skilled in this area. In his past life before the apocalypse, he had devoted himself to his career. Later forced to be with Cui Yingying, he had no such needs during the post-apocalyptic escape. Just after settling down, he was schemed against and paralyzed for over 10 years. Now, living again with more experience, what he valued was no longer mere physical gratification. Compared to the visual stimulation of Jiang Yue's body, Yize preferred to look straight into her eyes, searching that pitch-black abyss for a familiar flutter of emotion. Wash first. Call me when you're done. Yize stepped out of the bathroom before she was completely undressed. This bathroom was specially built. No windows, the only connection to the outside being the door he was at. Even the glass was semi-transparent, allowing a blurry view of the figure inside. Yize leaned against the wall outside the bathroom door, lit a cigarette, his brows knitted tightly. After rebirth, his desire for control had become increasingly unmanageable. He could not bear to let Jiang Yue out of his sight for even a second. So either he took her with him personally, or he placed her in his own ability space, needing to be certain of her existence. This wouldn't do. Yize pondered this problem as a cigarette burned down, ashes almost falling onto his. But before he could work it out, a loud crash came from the bathroom. Yize's heart skipped a beat. He burst through the door to see Jiang Yue sitting in the tub, submerged in foam. As for the source of the noise, Yize glanced at the dent in the wall, then at Jiang Yue, who was staring intently at the bubbles floating in the air, ready to strike again. Yize grabbed Jiang Yue's hand that was gathering force, stopping her from smashing another bubble. These bubbles won't hurt you. Don't be afraid. It seemed an entire bottle of shower gel had been emptied into the tub. Jiang Yue's hand was slippery. Yize sighed softly and helped her wash, teaching her how to do it. It was a sort of unconventional training. Thanks to the foam covering, he didn't feel too awkward. After cleaning the zombie, he had her dress herself, then stored her in his space. Compared to Jiang Yue's fussing, Yize was much more perfunctory with himself. He took a quick shower, changed into clean clothes, and headed out with Jiang Yue. Little fatty Xian Wenrui was squatting outside his tiny dilapidated hut doing repairs. That old house hadn't been torn down, but Yize had only used it as a decoy. It was barely livable. Still, he had a great attitude, grateful to Yize for providing him shelter, and knew his boundaries well enough not to think of entering Yize's house. When he saw Yize come out, he immediately smiled and greeted him. "Brother Lu, you're out." The moment he spoke, he froze in place. Wait. The one his brother Lu was holding hands with didn't look like his zombie sister-in-law. Could it be that brother Lu had several sisters-in-law in his house? Little Fatty was shocked. Little Fatty hesitated. Little Fatty couldn't believe it. He eyed the woman beside Yize suspiciously, wrapped up tightly, wearing a mask and sunglasses, a black cap on her head, long sleeves and pants revealing nothing. But she followed his brother Lu obediently. Definitely not the zombie he saw yesterday, who only cared about eating. He scratched his head, looked uncertainly at Yize. "Brother Lu, this. Is she also a sister-in-law?" Yize gave him a glance as if looking at an idiot. Before Yize could introduce her, Jiang Yue, who had been relatively well-behaved, caught the scent of an ability user's unique food aroma emanating from Little Fatty. She immediately bared her fangs, the ones she used for attacking. Her movement was too sudden. The sunglasses she had been wearing fell off, revealing eyes that were pitch black, the trademark of a zombie, right in front of Little Fatty. He was so frightened he fell to the ground. And from that angle, he could clearly see that the hands interlocked with his brother Lu's were distinctly green. Not so it had been the same one all along. Brother Lu truly had bizarre tastes. How could he be stuck on a zombie? Whether out of mischief or kindness, he only soothed the zombie beside him after she was frightened and generously put a mask on her. Jiang Yu was displeased, a trace of resentment glimmering in her eyes. She couldn't understand why she couldn't eat this either. She could be gentler, kill the fatty first, then eat without devouring raw. Cannibalism was out of the question. Yize would never allow Jiang Yu to eat humans, even though the notion of high-level zombies retaining human memories was merely a legend. But where there's smoke, there's fire. Moreover, the fact that Jiang Yu had come specifically to save him in his past life further corroborated this belief. Thus, to prevent her from having sickening memories when she regained human consciousness, he had to restrain her from eating people. Though angry, Jiang Yu was no match for Yize. Despite her resentment, she dared not resist, and could only be led by him. Yet her eyes and the ceaseless secretion of saliva still craved the flesh of that fatty. Seeing Yize about to leave, Xian Wenrui immediately trotted over. "Brother Lu, are you heading outside? Can I come along?" Although Yize had tossed him some supplies from the mall last time, food would eventually run out. He had been very frugal, eating only one compressed biscuit per day, but the remaining food wouldn't last more than a few months. Yize didn't mind bringing another person along as long as he wouldn't cause trouble. Besides, he could use a water-type ability user, and if he was going to rely on him, he needed to consider whether this guy was suitable for cooperation. Xian Wenrui, overjoyed by his agreement, was on the verge of tears. "Brother Lu, you're such a good person. As they say, fresh graduates are easy to fool. Someone like Xian Wenrui would likely be among the first to die in the apocalypse. No wonder he had never heard of him in his past life." The man and the zombie climbed into Yize's off-road vehicle. Because this area was remote and sparsely populated, the number of zombies was relatively low. But as they moved closer to the city, they found the zombie numbers had surged further. "Go kill those 3 zombies ahead." Yize spoke to Jiang Yu. She resisted, but instantly felt a powerful pressure compressing the air around her, causing her to let out an agonized roar. Yize's face was expressionless, but his voice was gentle. "Be a good girl, kill those zombies." Xian Wenrui trembled in the back seat, feeling that his brother Lu was somewhat deranged. Jiang Yu roared at Yize, then burst through the window, her hands transforming into sharp claws that pierced the zombies' brains directly. Her instinct as a zombie told her how to deal with her own kind. The zombie's blood was a dark greenish-black, staining Jiang Yu's hands black as it dripped from her sharp nails. Her earloop mask had slipped halfway off, dangling from one ear. The oversized sunglasses, half covered in black fluid, were spattered with specks on Jiang Yu's clean face, stark against her jade-like skin. Only after she had single-handedly killed 3 zombies did Yize retract his ability. He walked over to Jiang Yu and began wiping her hands and face. He sensed a lingering aura of violence in Jiang Yu. Bending down, he extracted the crystal cores from the zombie's brains, still smeared with brain matter. He opened his hand, the cores lying in his palm. Crystal cores were immensely beneficial to zombies, and Jiang Yu reached out to snatch them, but Yize withdrew his hand, clenching them in his fist. He looked at Jiang Yu and said, "Remember, they are your food, but I am your kind." Jiang Yu was no longer a low-level zombie. After evolving, she had a brain the size of a soybean, capable of thought, and at least at that moment, she understood where to extract the crystals. Just then, another zombie appeared not far away. Jiang Yu's eyes fixed on it, lunged with incredible speed, grabbed its arm, and tore it off with a single jerk. Evolved zombies possessed doubled speed and strength, so Yize had no worries about Jiang Yu getting her. In the span of a breath, Jiang Yu had already extracted the crystal from the zombie's brain. Yize smiled with satisfaction. Yes, everything he did now was aimed at truly separating Jiang Yu from the other zombies. He didn't want Jiang Yu with her pea-sized brain to still think of her zombie kin. But the next moment when Jiang Yu opened her mouth to shove the brain matter-covered crystal in, Yize choked and immediately stopped her. Xian Wenrui's legs weak crawled out of the car. Watching brother Lu patiently teach a zombie not to eat dirty things, he couldn't help but feel that he had somehow latched onto a powerful figure. Such a formidable zombie obediently listened to brother Lu, and Xian Wenrui suddenly felt a sense of urgency to prove his worth. Brother Lu, I studied my ability all day yesterday and think I'm getting the hang of it. Want me to help clean those? Yize gave him a scrutinizing glance, perhaps to see how he would do it, then handed over the 4 zombie crystals. Wash them clean. Trust. This was trust. The little fatty suddenly felt proud. Taking the crystals, he strained with all his might, producing a small puddle of water in his hand, just enough to envelop the crystals. The crystals spun slowly in the water as the grime gradually peeled off. It took some time, but Yize was the most patient man, and he even had the leisure to wipe Jiang Yu's fingers one by one. Jiang Yu couldn't care less about cleanliness. Her eyes were glued to the crystals in the fatty's hand, oblivious to whether Yize was wiping her claws or her face. After the first wash, the little fatty was drenched in sweat, as if had been pulled out of water. Yet even so, he didn't utter a single complaint. He pushed his ability to the limit again, producing another small puddle of water to envelop the crystals for a second rinse. Cleaning 4 crystals took nearly half an hour. By then the little zombie had lost interest in those crystals. She could have killed 2 more zombies faster. Brother Lu, sister-in-law, done they're clean. Xian Wenrui nearly jumped for joy, but he was too exhausted to actually leap. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. Yize glanced at his sweat-soaked clothes, guessing that if wrung out the water would exceed what his ability could produce. Xian Wenrui handed the crystals to Yize with no ulterior motives. Taking them, Yize said, thanks. But he offered no further guidance. He had no need to talk much to him. Deep down, he still didn't trust him. For now, they were merely using each other. He needed a water-type ability user, and the other needed a place to stay. Having been betrayed in his past life, Yize trusted no one except Jiang Yu. No need, brother Lu, don't be so polite. You saved my life. Xian Wenrui scratched his head. Yize, though cold-hearted, had no intention of taking advantage of others for nothing. If you're referring to that incident back, then regardless of whether I saved you or not, you wouldn't have died. A few zombies. If he hadn't been resolved to die, he likely would have survived, and perhaps driven by the will to live, he might even have accelerated his mastery of the ability. Xian Wenrui didn't understand all this, but he knew that even if he survived, surviving alone in the apocalypse would not be easy. As for going back to argue with Lian Chong and the others, forget it. Who knew what tricks Cui Yingying might pull? Now he had a shabby room of his own and could store a bit of food. Xian Wenrui was already very satisfied and felt even more grateful to Yize. Brother Lu, rest assured I won't hold you back. From now on, whenever you and sister-in-law need water, he'll take care of it. Xian Wenrui patted his chest, speaking with great confidence. As you wish. Yize wouldn't refuse resources offered to him anyway. Besides, if not for his ability, why would he take on this trouble? Xian Wenrui was also ambitious. Afterwards, when he saw zombies, he no longer cowered in the back seat, staring blankly. He picked up his only weapon, a baseball bat, and went to smash their heads. Don't be fooled by how easily Jiang Yu took down zombies with a single claw. When Xian Wenrui actually faced them, he realized zombies aren't cabbages, and his sister-in-law was truly a ruthless one. No, a ruthless zombie. Yize sat in the driver's seat, a cigarette in hand, watching the fat man who had an ability but didn't know how to use it, bashing zombie heads with a baseball bat. The apocalypse had just begun, so even though some people had awakened abilities, they didn't know how to use them. Yet to zombies, ability users were supplements that could quickly enhance their power. Presumably by now there was more than just Jiang Yu as an evolved zombie in the city. Jiang Yu instantly killed 5 zombies, extracted their crystal cores, glanced secretly at Yize in the car, turned around, and thinking he wouldn't notice, opened her mouth and stuffed the brain matter-covered cores inside. But the crystals seemed to have an independent space around them. The zombies' teeth, which could crush skulls, simply couldn't bite into the air. After several failed attempts, Jiang Yu angrily brought the handful of cores to Yize. Faced with the little zombies' defiance, Yize chuckled. Wash them clean and eat. I won't fight you for them. Jiang Yu only understood the word eat. She got it. Wash them equaled can eat. Yize used water from his spatial storage to clean the cores. The little fat man who had barely killed one zombie and was covered in wounds saw this, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Brother Lu, are you also a water-type ability user? Xian Wenrui had been a student before the apocalypse and read many novels. He automatically classified his own ability as water-type. Now seeing water coming from nowhere from Yize, he asked that question. No. Yize denied without explanation, leaving the fat man scratching his head in curiosity. Though not strong, Xian Wenrui had tact and knew not to ask what he shouldn't. Seeing that Yize didn't intend to say more, he stopped asking and simply handed the crystal core he had barely obtained to Brother Lu. Brother Lu, I don't have anything good. I saw sister-in-law likes eating these, so give her this one. The crystal core in his hand seemed to have been roughly cleaned with some clean water, so it didn't look too dirty. Yize looked up at him. Keep it for yourself. The fat man was a bit disappointed. Yize fed Jiangyu a crystal core before adding, it can enhance abilities. Xian Wenrui instantly perked up. His eyes, squeezed small by fat, burst with light and even misted over. His brother Lu was a really truly good man. Brother Lu, from now on you're my real brother. A fat man crying with gratitude wouldn't move Yize. His crying was far uglier than the little zombies. The fat man was overwhelmed with emotion and the little zombie was engrossed in munching her crystal core. Yize took out a map, glanced at it, and decided to explore the nearby commercial area. He wouldn't mind having more supplies. Raising a zombie was no easy task, and besides the commercial area had many zombies, so he planned to stock up on crystal cores. Only a dozen or so days into the apocalypse, the order built by humans had begun to crumble. Actually, zombies were secondary. The greatest impact came from mutated plants and animals. They were forced to get out halfway because the road was destroyed by wildly overgrown plants, fragmented and impassable. After getting out, the car was instantly stored into Yize's space. Xian Wenrui was startled, nearly thinking their car had been stolen. But seeing Yize's calm demeanor, he wisely shut up. Mutated plants and animals also needed nutrients to thrive, and evolved zombies, as well as ability users, made excellent nourishment. However, Yize used his ability to conceal the scent and form of the three of them within a certain space, making them undetectable to the mutated plants and animals. Xian Wenrui walked tremblingly, terrified that he might be swept away by the vines and become genuine plant fertilizer. They reached the largest department store in the city, and the sight before them was hair-raising. A gigantic mutated centipede coiled around the department store. Its red head surveyed its territory, its ink-black body enveloped the 100-meter building, and hundreds of densely packed legs undulated continuously. Its mouth parts opened and closed, revealing sharp teeth and a crimson cavity. Inside were undigested red remains. Saliva dripped constantly from the corners of its mouth, forming puddles on the ground and emitting a pungent odor. The compound eyes on either side of its head, aided by antennae, discerned direction and hunted for food. This mutated centipede had devoured who knew how many humans and zombies. Its energy level rivaled that of an LV2 ability user. Yize was close to LV2 but had not yet broken through. This was probably the most formidable opponent he had encountered since his rebirth. Yize's ability could not conceal them from the centipede's perception, as its strength far exceeded his. The countless eyes within the centipede's compound eyes instantly locked onto their position. Hundreds of thousands of eyes stared fixedly in their direction, and they weren't even as large as a single one of those eyes. Under such immense pressure, Xian Wenrui was so scared he nearly wet himself on the spot. Quick scatter. Yize instantly deactivated his ability. As his words fell, the gigantic mutated centipede had already opened its saliva-drenched bloody maw, and with a powerful gust of air dove toward them. Yize pulled Jiangyu aside to dodge, while Xian Wenrui, driven by survival instinct, quickly threw himself to the ground, barely avoiding the impact of the mutated centipede. Each leg of the mutated centipede dwarfed the insignificant human body. Xian Wenrui scrambled to his feet and fled, glancing back toward Yize and the others amidst his disheveled flight. The centipede ignored him completely, charging straight at Yize with fierce and relentless attacks. Yize narrowly evaded while enveloping it with his ability, trying to find its weakness within the space he controlled. But the mutated centipede was too massive. The spatial range Yize could manipulate was insufficient to fully encase it. He was far from the effortless mastery he would possess a decade into the apocalypse. Aside from his spatial ability, his offensive options were pathetically limited. After dodging several frenzied attacks, a hint of sinister rage flickered in Yize's eyes. He turned and began condensing spatial points on the colossal creature, its abdomen, mouth, head, and an inch within its vital spot, one after another. Jiangyu, however, felt no fear toward the centipede. She was entirely consumed by the urge to feed. She leaped onto the centipede's body, but her usually lethal claws failed to penetrate its carapace, and she was nearly thrown off. Sensing the tempting morsel behind it, the centipede's hundreds of legs grew restless. It twisted its head, attempting to bite the restless zombie on its back. Seeing Jiangyu in peril, the chubby man, knowing how much she meant to his brother Lu, gritted his teeth and charged forward. To hell with it, I'll risk my life today. Xian Wenrui grabbed the mutated centipede's tail, and at the cost of half his strength managed to conjure a water sphere against it. The water sphere failed to even crack its shell. His attack was as ineffectual as scratching an itch through. Realizing her claws could not pierce its dorsal armor, Jiang Yu decisively retreated. She dodged the centipede's lethal strike, but suffered a gash on her arm from which dark black blood seeped. At the sight, Yize's eyes darkened. Without hesitation, he charged toward the mutated centipede, which far surpassed him in both speed and power. As he neared, and sensed Jiang Yu's intent, he formed a spatial blade in his palm and struck the centipede's head. The impact injured its antennae, sending it into momentary disorientation. With a savage grin and bared fangs, Jiang Yu seized the opportunity to pierce the centipede's compound eyes with her claws. The centipede writhed in frenzy, its body rapidly contracting and expanding. Its hard, sharp legs left deep gouges in the ground with every touch. In its agony, both the human and zombie on its back and head were thrown off. Yize caught Jiang Yu securely while the fatty crashed to the ground, cushioned only by his bulk. Ouch! Xian Wenrui groaned, clutching his back and wondering if he was dying. Falling from nearly 3 stories high. Surely this was the end. But no one had time for his melodramatics. Yize set Jiang Yu down and retrieved a specially crafted ultra-durable knife from his spatial storage. Gunpowder or such only empowered mutated flora and fauna, making primitive cold weapons more effective. The knife, forged from Iron Mother, combined with Yize's ability to continuously compress pressure within the spatial field, created immense force. The moment Yize struck the centipede's abdomen, the blade met its hard shell with a sharp clang. He used gravity to amplify his downward force. From the top to the belly of the centipede, sparks flew as the blade carved through its armor. Enraged by the loss of its feelers and compound eyes, the creature twisted wildly, all 100 legs attacking Yize simultaneously. Yize cast away the knife, now just a hilt. The wounded centipede in a fury bled dark green ichor from its scales and abruptly accelerated. Having anticipated this, Yize faced the onslaught with calm composure. He hadn't counted on that crude strike. During the brief approach, his spatial ability had scanned the creature, and amid the collision of air currents, he detected its weakness. Beside its head, near the compound eyes, lay a condensed crystal, akin to a zombie's core or a human's ability nucleus, the source of its power. As the 100-meter-long centipede lowered its head to bite, Yize shrouded himself entirely in his ability. The creature swallowed him with almost effortless ease. Witnessing this, Jiang Yu and Xian Wenrui, both injured, were momentarily stunned, their minds blank. Reacting faster than Xian Wenrui, Jiang Yu, driven by instinct, immediately leaped into the centipede's sister-in-law. Before Xian Wenrui could act, the mutated centipede began convulsing violently, its body leveling nearby buildings. He couldn't even mourn as swept into an underground passage entrance. He wiped his tears and, driven by survival, crawled inside without hesitation. But the passage reeked of decay, nauseating. In the dim light, he saw human skeletons scattered everywhere. Chilled to the bone, he heard a low growl from outside. Only then did he realize, pale with terror, what had happened, and tears streamed down his face. He wiped his tears and snot, his gaze hardening as he crawled out, grabbed a broken blade his brother Lu had left behind, and charged forward recklessly. Unexpectedly, the monstrous centipede suddenly halted, its gaping maw unable to close, foul saliva dripping from it. At the moment its maw began to shut, it thrashed hysterically, its body rolling violently as disgusting brown-green liquid oozed from its head. Debris flew. Xian Wenrui threw himself to the ground to dodge, unable to see what was happening. Then inexplicably, the 100-meter mutated centipede froze in place, with numerous points of light emitting from various parts of its body. Its head, mouth, abdomen, hundreds of limbs. Over 100 points of light, as if controlled, gradually connected into white lines. In an instant, these lines erupted with force, slicing the centipede into pieces. Chunks of flesh scattered on the ground, none taller than a human calf. Xian Wenrui stared in disbelief until he dimly saw his brother Lu drenched in blood, leaning against the zombie. Both, or rather one human and one zombie, had emerged unscathed. Xian Wenrui clutched the broken blade in his hands, tears streaming down his face as he ran toward them, shouting incoherently, "Brother Lu, sister-in-law, it's so good that you're both all right." Facing such a colossal creature, surviving was indeed a blessing. Yet the moment Xian Wenrui drew near, Yize's eyes flickered with cautious wariness. He was now severely weakened and would need time to recover. If Xian Wenrui, who still had strength left, chose to attack, Yize's gaze turned sinister. He would have no choice but to fight to the death and kill him first. Fortunately, Xian Wenrui harbored no such ambition. He was merely bawling his eyes out. "Whoa, brother Lu, you're truly incredible. I'm so glad you made it out alive. Sister-in-law, I misjudged you. You are genuinely devoted. You jumped into that monster's mouth without hesitation to save brother Lu." Yize glanced at Jiang Yu, who was equally injured. Indeed, the moment he saw Jiang Yu inside the mutated centipede's mouth, he felt as if his heart had stopped for a second. The mutated centipede's teeth were nearly crushing Jiang Yu's body, but in the next instant, she was enveloped by a familiar surge of psionic power. Yize almost thought she had regained her human memories, but then the zombie rushed toward him and bit down on his. Yize instantly suppressed the gratitude in his heart. So she hadn't come to share his hardship. She was furious that her food had been swallowed by someone else, and she would risk death for a bite. While she only had the brain the size of a bean, he couldn't be too hard on her. Before deliberately being swallowed by the mutated centipede, Yize had already planted hundreds of spatial points on its body, planning to extract its crystal nucleus first, and then strike. This mutated centipede was more powerful than Yize, so, without removing the crystal core, he could hardly pose a significant threat to its body. That was why he intentionally entered the centipede's mouth. The crystal core was located beside its compound eyes, making it easier to reach from the inside. However, the oral cavity of this mutated centipede was highly corrosive. Even with his psionic barriers, he couldn't completely block it. He had to act quickly, or else they would truly become the centipede's fertilizer. Yize pulled a knife from his space. But the zombie that had been biting him seemed to sense the crystal core's presence, and suddenly released his hand. Without Yize needing to lift a finger, the zombie tore open the centipede's flesh. Compared to the creature's hardened armor, its internal flesh offered no resistance to the zombie, and was easily shredded. It was precisely their actions that caused the mutated centipede to roar. Once the zombie had tunneled through, they spotted an orange crystal core embedded deep within. Jiang Yu grew excited, eager to extract it. But then the centipede's body churned violently, likely a self-protection mechanism. Green fluid surged from its stomach, charging at the intruders. Yize wrapped his psionic energy around Jiang Yu, shielding them both, barely withstanding the assault. Jiang Yu glared at the green liquid, blocking her meal, as if it were a mortal enemy. Just before leaving, she bit off a chunk of the flesh. The crystal core was finally exposed. Yize seized the opportunity to chisel out the tiny orange core no larger than a fingernail. An advanced zombie could taste the piece she had bitten was foul and nauseating, and Jiang Yu couldn't help but spit it out. Yize looked at her helplessly. "I told you not to eat random things." Now she had to taste something disgusting. With the crystal core removed, Yize manipulated his psionic ability, and sensed the spatial points he had placed gradually connecting. He also felt the mutated centipede losing its life force, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Jiang Yu wanted to devour the orange crystal core, but Yize kept it away from her, not because he refused to let her have it, but because she couldn't absorb it yet. If she ate it now, she would most likely explode. Plus, after the bad meal, she was somewhat repulsed by the core. He casually took an ordinary red crystal from his space and handed it to her. The zombie had little brain, and after receiving the red crystal, she didn't realize it had been swapped, and chewed it with great satisfaction. Perhaps hoping for more crystals in the future, Jiang Yu obediently walked over to Yize and resigned herself to being his walking crutch. Yize's psionic energy was completely drained, a dangerous state in the apocalypse. After emerging, he retrieved an off-road vehicle from his space, rested inside, and absorbed several low-level zombie crystals. Facing this mutated centipede, both the man and the zombie had suffered considerable injuries, especially Yize and Jiang Yu, who had been inside the centipede's body. Jiang Yu, being a zombie, felt no pain and was actually in the best spirits. Yize was the most gravely wounded and had exhausted his abilities. Not trusting her to stay outside alone, he withdrew her into his psionic space. Xian Wenrui had grown quite calm about the sudden appearance of the vehicle and the disappearance of his sister-in-law. He was not too badly hurt, but a single glance from Yize told him that Xian's psionic energy was also depleted. Recalling Xian's earlier performance, Yize closed his eyes and said, "Take out the crystal core. You have sensed the energy within it, and absorb it." At that moment, Xian Wenrui felt both admiration and gratitude toward Brother Lu. If not for him, he would probably have perished here today. Without a second word, he immediately obeyed. Perhaps the recent battle had given him new insights into his ability, so absorption was not difficult. Even with only one crystal, Xian Wenrui spent a long time absorbing it, though he was certainly much faster than the severely wounded Yize. But the moment he opened his eyes, he felt a sharp gaze sweep over him. Xian Wenrui knew Brother Lu was vigilant, so he tactfully spoke. "Brother Lu, I'll check the building for supplies. You get some rest." Yize didn't care whether he stayed or left. Xian Wenrui had no intention of leaving. He crept into the building and saw scattered remains of both humans and zombies. It instantly reminded him of the basement he had stumbled into earlier, a mass of human bones gnawed clean. A chill ran down his spine. He hastily gathered some non-perishable food and daily necessities. On his way out, he passed a clothing store and ransacked it as well. Xian Wenrui made trips back and forth, stuffing the off-road vehicle full. But when he returned from his last trip, he noticed that the shattered remains of the mutated centipede that had been scattered on the ground were almost all gone, leaving only its broken head. Xian Wenrui shot a questioning glance at Brother Lu, but didn't ask. Brother Lu, I grabbed some clean clothes from the building. Do you and your lady want to find a place to wash up? Xian Wenrui produced a large box stuffed with a jumble of garments. Yize had actually been thinking the same thing, but he didn't need the clothes. He had plenty in his spatial storage. Keep them for yourself. We don't need them. He couldn't let Jiang Yu wear undergarments someone else had picked for her. Rejected Xian Wenrui felt a pang of disappointment at not being able to help, but he quickly rallied and began acting as Yize's guide. He knew this urban district like the back of his hand. Brother Lu, there's a bathhouse up ahead. It probably has stored water. We might still get a clean wash. The location's pretty good too, with lots of barbecue stalls around. A bit further is the municipal building, and the Civil Affairs Bureau is nearby. Yize had been indifferent until he heard the words Civil Affairs Bureau. His fingers tapped the steering wheel. He had proposed to Jiang Yue, but there was no legal bond between them. Since childhood, Yize had always liked to firmly grasp what he wanted so no one could take it away. Xian Wenrui hadn't realized how distracted his brother Lu had become because of that one sentence. They took a shower at the bathhouse. He waited at the door for a long time until his brother Lu emerged holding the freshly washed and fragrant sister-in-law by the hand. Yize tossed him the keys. Drive to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Huh. Xian Wenrui finally sensed something was wrong. The Civil Affairs Bureau. To get married. To whom? The words had barely left his mouth when Xian Wenrui realized what a stupid question had asked. Who else? Other than the sister-in-law who had turned into a zombie. As for whether a human and a zombie could legally marry, that was even more redundant. Who cared who you married now? Humanity was on the verge of extinction. Xian Wenrui slapped his forehead. Oh, right. He'll drive you there. In fact, Xian Wenrui felt inexplicably excited. He secretly glanced at the back seat where a human and a zombie sat with fingers intertwined. He had to admit, at least in terms of looks, they were quite a match. If only he could have a wife like that, beautiful and powerful. He'd probably want to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau too. Xian Wenrui's gossipy heart inexplicably danced with excitement. Brother Lu, how did you and sister-in-law meet? You two seem so close. Life and death together. The uneducated Shuden racked his brain, but could only come up with that one cliché. Yize sat in the back playing with Jiang Yu's slender fingers. In this non-extreme state, her nails looked normal except for their color. She had a crush on me. She confessed first. Damn. So enviable. How could a woman who looks like her need to have a secret crush? Xian Wenrui exclaimed excitedly. Who knows? Yize kneaded Jiang Yu's hand absently. If she had appeared before the apocalypse, maybe he could have settled down a few years earlier. Jiang Yu, still unaware that her secret crush had been exposed, and that she had been credited with the first confession, was now tilting her head staring at Yize's hand. She didn't find her own hand particularly interesting. Instead, she thought Yize's hand looked very appealing, and thinking it, she acted on it, lowering her head to bite Yize's hand and refusing to let go. But she didn't use real force, as she knew she was no match for him if he fought back, so she just held it in her mouth to taste. Yize frowned. When had she picked up this habit? Why had she developed this bothersome tendency to bite? Hearing the commotion, the chubby guy glanced at the rearview mirror and saw Jiang Yu's head buried in Yize's lap. He was so startled, he coughed violently. Brother Lu, should I get out first? To give you two some privacy. He was terrified of accidentally seeing something he shouldn't. Wouldn't his eyeballs be gouged out? Yize knew immediately that Xian Wenrui had misunderstood. He slid his fingers through her hair, pinched the back of her neck, and lifted her up, letting the lewd-minded Xian Wenrui see her true purpose. Xian Wenrui breathed a sigh of relief, then thinking of his overreaction couldn't help but let out an awkward laugh. Brother Lu Yu and sister-in-law have such a great relationship. Yize didn't refute that. Xian Wenrui deliberately glanced at the pair in the back seat and noticed that his brother Lu had cunningly dressed them both in matching outfits. Had prepared everything in advance. Before Yize noticed, Xian Wenrui averted his gaze and focused on driving. When they arrived near the Civil Affairs Bureau, the two humans and one zombie got out. The area had abundant greenery, which had spawned many mutant plants that had burrowed through the building structures. The Civil Affairs Bureau was completely pierced by a massive vine, but this vine showed no aggressive intent. It was a relatively mild-tempered mutant plant. In fact, sensing that Yize's power exceeded its own, it chose to silently retract its sprawling branches. I wonder if the equipment inside still works. Xian Wenrui frowned at the damaged walls. Before he could step directly into the bureau, Yize stopped him. Unsurprisingly, the place was infested with many zombies. As expected, the moment the door opened, they saw a male zombie inside gnawing on a decayed female body. The woman's flesh had been completely devoured, leaving only a rotted maggot-infested head. The gruesome sight made Xian Wenrui lean against the wall and retch. Confronted by the sudden intruders, the zombie's black pupils contracted. Clutching the severed head, it leaped over the wall and fled. Yize narrowed his eyes at the retreating figure. So there were already level 1 zombies in the city, and this one in particular. Half dead from vomiting, Xian Wenrui found the stench in the building suffocating. As he took a few steps inside, he stepped on a fallen marriage certificate. Out of curiosity, he picked it up. The date on the certificate was exactly the day the comet fell and the world began to mutate, September 4th. In the photo, the two smiling individuals included the male zombie that had just fled. The woman beside him could barely be recognized as the corpse whose head was being gnawed. Brother Lu, look at this. The marriage certificate felt like a hot potato in Xian Wenrui's hand. Thinking of the happy young couple in the photo now torn apart by life and death, he wondered what they had been through. Yize glanced at it without giving it much thought. Such tragedies were countless in the late apocalypse. Besides, he had vaguely recognized the zombie just now. It seemed to be the notorious Zombie King that even ability users found troublesome. The Zombie King was always accompanied by a skeleton. Legend had it that when a zombie reached that level, they regained their human memories. The reason such rumors spread was that this Zombie King had advanced while besieged, and afterward seemed to suffer a severe mental breakdown, nearly driven mad. If what he regained was the memory of devouring his beloved's body with his own hands, that would indeed be. Yize spoke to the hesitant Xian Wenrui, who was holding the marriage certificate. Keep it, it might come in handy later. According to Yize, the only thing the Zombie King valued was the skull he carried with him. If the rumors were true that was the head of his beloved, then perhaps the marriage certificate that Xian Wenrui picked up could earn him a favor from the Zombie King. Yize had no connection with that Zombie King in his past life. Compared to the enemies he had from before, he held no prejudice against this zombie. Come on, take it. I don't know how to use it either, Xian Wenrui said, scratching his head. Although he didn't understand what it was, his instincts told him it had great significance. Just keep it, Yize replied. Though he had a cold personality, he wouldn't take advantage of others. He wouldn't accept something just because it seemed valuable. Only after confirming that Yize did not intend to take it did Xian Wenrui breathe a sigh of relief and quietly put the item away. Xian Wenrui had relied on his instincts to survive until now, and at present those instincts told him that this item might save his life someday. Yize stepped around the corpse on the ground, but glanced down and noticed that the cores of the zombies had already been taken, likely consumed by the zombie that had escaped. This further confirmed that the zombie had advanced just like Jiangyu. Yize pondered as he pulled Jiangyu along. Lu, go wait for me. Having tucked the marriage certificate away, Xian Wenrui looked up and realized Lu Gu had already walked quite a distance, prompting him to hurry and catch up. Yize stood at the marriage registration window where the staff had long since vanished, leaving only several decaying corpses inside. He didn't care much for ceremony. As long as the necessary items were present, it was sufficient. Yize took out a power supply from his space and approached to try turning on the computer. After several attempts, fortunately one of them powered on. Before the apocalypse, Yize had studied computer science and his company was related to the internet, so inputting information was as easy as pie for him. He had memorized Jiangyu's information after investigating it earlier. After inputting their details, he looked up at the chubby guy who was glancing around and said, "Help us take a picture." Xian Wenrui was a bit excited upon hearing this, saying, "A wedding photos. It's my first time helping someone take wedding photos. Luga, don't worry, well, I'll make sure you both are satisfied with them." Yize led Jiangyu toward the photography room, hoping the camera in the studio was still functional. Even if it was broken, it was no issue. He had specifically stored a camera in his space. Following behind them was the drenched photographer Xian Wenrui, who noticed that both Lu Gu and his sister-in-law were remarkably calm. He could understand Lu Ji's composure, but he wondered if his sister-in-law even grasped the concept of marriage. Could this be considered a sham marriage? However, he thought again, his sister-in-law was willing to leap into the jaws of a monster to save people, which moved Xian Wenrui once more. Such a bond of life and death. His sister-in-law must be willing to marry. They were indeed lucky. This photography room was likely the best preserved in the entire building, suffering minimal damage. After picking up the fallen camera, he turned it on and found that it was still usable. Xian Wenrui stood in front of the camera and called for Yize and Jiangyu to take a seat. Sitting still was torturous for zombies. Jiangyu was unwilling, but ultimately under Yize's coercive powers, she reluctantly sat down. Yize removed the mask and sunglasses from her face, combing her hair to make her look quite obedient. With a hint of laughter in his eyes, he unclasped the necklace around Jiangyu's neck, took out the ring she had chosen earlier, and held her hand to put it on her. "You chose this, do you like it?" Yize knew she could understand some words now, so he asked her. Jiangyu stared blankly at the stone in her hand, not understanding its significance, but for some reason she did not want to damage it. Jiangyu didn't speak, but Yize noticed her carefully reaching out to touch it, knowing she likely liked it as well. "As long as you like it." Watching the intimate scene between a person and a corpse, Xian Wenrui felt as if he were sitting on pins and needles. Thankfully, Yize didn't forget the main task. After placing the ring on Jiangyu, he said to Xian Wenrui, "Go ahead and take the picture." Oh, okay. Xian Wenrui snapped back to reality, exhaling a sigh of relief, and quickly focused the lens, taking several shots. Before taking the pictures, he was worried that the combination of a person and a zombie would look strange, but after seeing the handsome man and beautiful woman in the photos, he was unexpectedly pleased with how well they matched. Why do I have a talent for photography? How can I take such great ID photos? Xian Wenrui exclaimed as he looked up, meeting the faces of the two in front of him, and suddenly fell silent. Oh, it seemed his skills didn't matter much. It was purely that the person and the zombie were both strikingly good-looking. In silence, Xian Wenrui came to terms with reality. After taking the photos, it was much easier to proceed with the tasks. After printing the photos, he trimmed them and pasted them into a dedicated book, then stamped it with the Civil Affairs Bureau's official seal. He also registered their marriage information in the computer, thus finalizing the marriage. Xian Wenrui, acting as the staff member, ceremoniously handed the two marriage certificates to the newlyweds and said a few flattering words, wishing you both a lifetime of harmony and 100 years of happiness. Yize had heard that usually when newlyweds come to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get married, they would bring a small box of wedding candies to share their joy. He had some candies stored in his space, so Yize casually pulled out 2 packs and also handed over 2 zombie cores to Xian Wenrui, the only witness, saying, "Wedding candies." Xian Wenrui was taken aback, truly not expecting to receive wedding candies at Lu Guest's wedding. After absorbing an entire zombie core, he felt his powers had noticeably improved. The significance and rarity of zombie cores aside, just these 2 packs of candies were quite hard to come by. Before the apocalypse, candies might not have been difficult to obtain, but now it was the end times. Resources could be scarce at any moment, and candies were among the most fiercely contested resources. In emergencies, a single piece of candy could provide the necessary energy to potentially save a life. Lu Gu. Xian Wenrui looked at Yize with gratitude and emotion. Yize, uninterested in the sight of a grown man with tears and snot flowing, tossed the items to him and dragged Jiangyu out the door. Jiangyu, however, was somewhat unhappy now. She had been staring at the zombie core in the chubby guy's hand, not understanding why she didn't have one. Why was she not allowed to have it while it was given to the chubby guy? Yize noticed that this zombie was stubbornly standing at the car door, refusing to get in. After thinking for a moment, he took out a zombie core, held it in front of her as bait, and said, "Are you coming or not?" The zombie's brain was too small. Once its gaze locked onto the crystal core in Yize's hand, it could not deviate, staring straight at it with unblinking ferocity. Yize had no particular hobbies in daily life, yet a streak of mischief lurked deep within his character. He shifted the crystal core, noticing that Jiangyu's eyeballs followed his movement precisely. How adorable. Jiangyu lunged forward to snatch it, but Yize used his psychic space to swap the core to his other hand. It was merely a process of withdrawing the crystal core into his psychic space with his left hand and retrieving it with his right. However, Yize's movements were so swift that Jiangyu's zombie brain could not fathom the mechanism. Dazed, she then pounced toward the other hand, only to miss again. After several repetitions, Jiangyu grew increasingly zombie-like, veins bulging on her neck in fury. Just as she seemed on the verge of exploding, Yize chuckled and placed the crystal core before her eyes. Jiangyu eyed the crystal core in Yize's hand with uncertainty. After so many taunts, even a zombie had learned caution. Jiangyu cast a furtive glance at Yize, then crept closer slyly. Instead of reaching out, she opened her mouth, revealing zombie fangs, and bit down with lightning speed. Had Yize not been a psychic whose body had been tempered, his fingers would have been bitten off by the zombie in that instant. The ambush failed. Jiangyu immediately retracted her fangs, pretending nothing had happened, as she tried to snatch the crystal core with her mouth, as if she had never intended to sever Yize's fingers. Nice teeth. Yize did not pull back his hand. Instead, he stroked Jiangyu's now human-like teeth, his gaze dark as he uttered those words. Xian Wenrui emerged and witnessed the scene, his brother Lu caressing his sister-in-law's canine teeth, his expression undisguised. Any fool could guess what he was thinking. After all, this was their wedding day. In ancient times, the newlyweds would have spent the night in their bridal chamber. One of life's 4 great joys. No wonder Brother Lu's thoughts wandered. But Brother Lu was truly a ruthless man. Wasn't he afraid that his wife might suddenly turn into a zombie mid-act and take a bite out of him? The mere thought sent a chill down Xian Wenrui's spine, and he shivered uncontrollably. Forget it, this kind of blessing is not for ordinary people. After feeding Jiangyu 2 crystal cores, she needed time to digest the energy within them. She ceased her mischief for a while, allowing Yize to put a mask, sunglasses, and hat on her without resistance. The zombie was bundled up tightly. He also removed the ring from her finger, but at that moment Jiangyu resisted slightly. Yize paused, and Xian Wenrui chimed in. She knows what a ring is. Wow, she really loves it. Though it was unclear what was in her mind, Jiangyu's reluctance was brief, and she soon became indifferent. After a moment of hesitation, Yize decided to let her keep it for now. If it was lost, so be it. They were not short of rings. Having killed a mutated centipede and numerous low-level zombies during this outing, Yize's space was not lacking in crystal cores. Moreover, the chubby man had previously scavenged a carload of supplies. They lacked nothing. Yize was tired today, so he asked the chubby one to drive, planning to return early and rest. Yize had just coaxed Jiang Yu into the car when Xian Wenrui, seated in the driver's seat, heard a familiar voice, shrill and grating. Yize, you scum! How could you do this to me? Yize turned to meet Cui Yingying's furious gaze. He was not a patient man, and he had even less tolerance for his enemies. He debated whether to kill Cui Yingying outright, or keep her alive to lure out that trash Dong Hong. Having struggled through the apocalypse for so long, Cui Yingying had long lost her former refinement. Even though Lian Chang took care of her, her current life was incomparably worse than before. When she saw Yize immaculate as if the apocalypse had never touched him, clearly having endured little hardship, her composure shattered. You planned this. Did you know the apocalypse was coming? You deliberately sold the company to my family cheaply just to cheat us out of our money. That's it. You beast. How can you be so ungrateful? If it weren't for my family feeding you like a dog, could you have survived to this day? And now you scheme against my father. Without him, you'd have nothing. Return everything you bought with our money. Her grating voice wore out Yize's patience. He could always find Dong Hong later. Why not take revenge on this enemy now? He had already butchered her in his past life. He wouldn't mind doing it again. Yize closed the car door and walked over to Cui Yingying, who was accustomed to lording over him. All his life, Yize had been a dog kept by her family. Why after college did her father tell her to fawn over him? If you kneel and beg me, maybe I can persuade my father to forgive you and let you live. I could even put in a word with Anshang and let you join us with your supplies. Before she could finish, Cui Yingying felt an immense force slam into her abdomen, sending her flying several meters. Agonizing pain spread as she collapsed on the ground, clutching her stomach. Her terrified gaze fixed on Yize, who stood motionless nearby. Yize was about to kill the noisy woman when unexpectedly Jiang Yue, who had been sitting quietly in the car, burst out with murderous intent and personally kicked Cui Yingying. Cui Yingying gaped at the heavily bundled woman, then glared at Yize. Yize, who is she? Are you just going to let her bully me? Though she despised Yize, she had grown accustomed to his preferential treatment. She had always regarded him as a dog for her family, a dog dedicated to serving them. Cui Yingying watched as Yize walked over to the woman, smug in the belief that he still cared for her family. His outburst in the hospital had been due to the shock of waking up. Even after he swindled all their money, she never doubted that Yize would help them if they were in trouble. Yet Yize simply approached the woman, examined her condition, and spoke in a tender tone she had never heard. Cui Yingying's smug smile froze, replaced by near-insane disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. Yize, who is she? Have you betrayed me? How can you be nice to anyone else? Yize genuinely believed that Cui Yingying was mentally deranged, who otherwise no ordinary person would possess such an inflated sense of self-awareness. Jiang Yue too could not fathom why, but subconsciously the sight of Cui Yingying stirred a sense of crisis within her, leaving her displeased. Jiang Yu shook off the hand Yize had been holding, intending to remove the glove from her hand and lash out at the woman who was recklessly shouting before her. However, Yize caught Jiang Yu. It was evident he was in a good mood, for he realized that although Jiang Yu was now a zombie, she was becoming increasingly human-like, gradually developing emotions and even understanding. Jealousy. Uncertain. Let's observe further. What are you angry about? She and I have no relationship whatsoever. Yize explained to the zombie, regardless of whether she could understand, but on their first day of marriage he did not wish for Jiang Yu to misunderstand. Yize, what are you saying? What do you mean we have no relationship? Do you think you can ever repay what you owe my family? Don't even think about cutting ties now. Cui Yingying held Yize in contempt, yet she could not bear to see him treat others well. Her father had said that Yize's debt to their family was insurmountable. Yize was like a dog. If you let even a morsel slip through your fingers, he would be grateful enough to give everything in return. The woman was far too noisy. Zombies were highly sensitive to sound. Jiang Yu forcefully shook off Yize's hand, even feeling resentment toward him for not allowing her to act. Seeing that his wife was truly about to become displeased, Yize decided not to tease her further. The next moment, Cui Yingying felt an irresistible force upon her body. After several futile attempts to resist, she collapsed to the ground. The memory of being inexplicably choked earlier resurfaced, and even now Cui Yingying had no idea what means Yize had employed, just as she had no clue how he had made his move this time. Yet before she could think further, Cui Yingying sensed forces binding her limbs and neck, firmly pinning her. She was like a piece of meat on a chopping board with no chance to struggle. Yize, what are you trying to do? Do you know who my current boyfriend is? If he finds out you've bullied me, he won't let you off. You can't act reckless. Cui Yingying despised Yize, believing he was coveting her beauty. She now put on the facade of a virtue, but in truth, she was only worried that if she were defiled by Lu Yize, Lianchang might discard her. Hearing her words, Lu Yize let out a derisive snort. He crouched down holding a knife, and without hesitation plunged it through Cui Yingying's palm. The pain elicited a piercing shriek from Cui Yingying. What did you think I was going to do? Lu Yize looked down upon Cui Yingying, who was now covered in tears and mucus, having lost control of her bladder from fear. Only then did Cui Yingying notice that there was not a trace of desire in Lu Yize's eyes when he looked at her. Only disgust, and the same contempt one would have for garbage. The scene of Cui Yingying's final visit to him in the laboratory in his past life overlapped with the present only with their roles reversed. Lu Yize twirled the knife nonchalantly and said, Cui Yingying, you're too noisy. Seeing the murderous intent in his eyes and realizing what he intended to do, she became utterly terrified. No, Lu Yize, you can't do this to me. My father was kind to you. You can't treat me this way. Enduring the searing pain in her hand, Cui Yingying tearfully tried to appeal to his sense of gratitude. Jiang Yue beside them did not understand their conversation, but the strong smell of blood stirred her appetite. Although the energy from the crystal core in her belly had not yet been fully digested, Jiang Yue had no objection to devouring such a person. After all, she could stomach it without issue. Much slower than Jiang Yue, Xian Wenrui, who had been chasing after them after opening the car door, finally caught up, panting heavily as he stared at Cui Yingying, who was still thrashing on the ground. Fury surged within him, and he burst out, Cui Yingying, you bitch. You haven't harmed me enough, and now you're falsely accusing Brother Lu. What business is it of yours? Brother Lu and sister-in-law are deeply in love, a perfect match. The moment Cui Yingying saw Xian Wenrui, she looked as if she had seen a ghost. Impossible. Aren't you supposed to be dead? How are you still alive? Deeming Cui Yingying far too noisy, Lu Yize did not hesitate to sever her tongue. Amidst excruciating pain, Cui Yingying let out a twisted howl, her gaze toward Lu Yize, now filled with nothing but terror. Lu Yize cut off her tongue, without even touching her, using the power of his ability. Having spent so many years in the apocalypse, the humanity within Lu Yize had been gradually eroded, and he saw nothing wrong with his actions. He himself saw no issue, and the zombie by his side naturally lacked any moral compass. If not for Lu Yize forbidding her from eating dirty things, perhaps Cui Yingying would have been spared these torments. On the contrary, Xian Wenrui, who had been cursing the most fiercely, was now trembling at the scene, his face pale. It was the first time he had witnessed such brutality toward a human in the apocalypse. But he quickly adjusted his mindset. Cui Yingying had tried to kill him. Even if Brother Lu killed her, he would not say a word, let alone merely cutting out her tongue. With her tongue severed, Cui Yingying could only let out agonized groans, blood constantly spilling from her mouth. Whether she lived or died mattered little to Lu Yize. Yet at the sight of her, Lu Yize was plunged back into the memories of his past life, and the malevolence within him could not be suppressed. He turned to look at Jiang Yue, recalling how such a docile and beautiful little zombie had ended up with broken limbs and a disfigured face. A chilling glint flashed in Lu Yize's eyes. Without hesitation, he severed one of Cui Yingying's arms and one of her legs. He also carved a deep scar across her face. He would make Cui Yingying endure every torment Jiang Yue had suffered. Cui Yingying, who had been pampered like a treasure by Cui Ming her entire life, had never experienced such agony. She writhed in pain, nearly dying. Xian Wenrui, who had been an ordinary otaku before the apocalypse, had felt nothing when killing zombies and giant centipedes, no matter how gory. But now, witnessing a living person having their limbs severed, he could not help but crouch down and vomit. Lu Yize paid him no mind. In his past life, at the beginning, he had killed not only zombies, but also humans in the struggle for survival resources. The first time he killed a person, Lu Yize vomited violently. But later, as he killed more, he gradually grew numb. In the apocalypse, it was kill or be killed. There were no friends, only enemies everywhere. What are you doing? Lianchang's harsh voice rang out from not far away. As he approached and saw Cui Yingying lying unconscious in a pool of blood, his eyes blazed with fury. The one who committed these ruthless acts was none other than his former friend Lu Yize, whose personality had now drastically changed. Lu Yize, have you lost your mind? Lianchang's eyes blazed with fury, reddened with rage. But at this moment, he couldn't even bring himself to question why Lu Yize would do such a thing, because in his view, no matter what happened, Lu Yize should not have gone this far. He tore his own clothes to bandage Cui Yingying, and blood immediately soaked through his garments. Cui Yingying's once beautiful face was now horrifically disfigured, with her jawbone clearly visible. Blood ceaselessly overflowed from her mouth, impossible to staunch. Lianchang watched in agony, helpless. Lu Yize did not stay to witness Lianchang's heartfelt display. He pulled Jiang Yue away and left. The ordeal today had been draining. But leaving wasn't easy. Lianchang picked up the injured Cui Yingying, glaring with hatred at Lu Yize's retreating back as he demanded angrily, Lu Yize, have you lost all humanity now? He couldn't understand why his former friend had changed so much, attacking his childhood sweetheart after waking up abandoning her and now committing such brutal acts. Explaining was troublesome. Besides, Yize turned to look at the indignant Lianchang. He found it amusing. So in your eyes, Cui Yingying was my fiancée. As a friend you took over quite eagerly. Lianchang felt a momentary discomfort. He hadn't actually intended to be with Cui Yingying, but after Yize abandoned her, and she was deceived when she clung to him crying, he couldn't bear to refuse. At first he managed to convince himself that as Yize's friend it was understandable to help take care of her. But he never expected that drinking would lead to trouble. He unintentionally ended up in bed with Cui Yingying. And since she was gentle and beautiful he accepted it. Now hearing Yize's words, besides discomfort, he felt an inexplicable anger. Then he noticed the girl Yize was holding hands with, and understanding dawned. So you turned ungrateful because of that woman by your side. You. Lianchang's words suddenly halted, for at that moment, he noticed Xian Wenrui standing behind them. You're still alive. Lianchang instantly forgot everything he wanted to say. The sight of Xian Wenrui left his mind blank. Are you surprised I'm alive? Did you tell Cui Yingying to kill me so you could seize my supplies? You call brother? What have you done that's any better? Hypocrite. Xian Wenrui had been simmering with rage earlier when he heard Lianchang standing on a moral high ground hypocritically condemning his brother Lu. What are you talking about? Lianchang looked bewildered. Stop pretending. If your team hadn't arranged it, how would two useless people like me and Cui Yingying end up together? She deliberately lured me to a place swarming with zombies, then took the only vehicle, leaving me to be surrounded by zombies. If Brother Lu hadn't passed by, I would have been dead. I don't know about this. Lianchang immediately retorted. Speaking of these matters made Xian Wenrui gnash his teeth in hatred. Yize didn't mind sowing discord and adding fuel to the fire at this moment. No, you must have guessed this possibility. You're a smart man, too clear about how to maximize benefits. You must have taken a good share of Xian Wenrui's remaining supplies. Yize's words made Lianchang's face alternate between pale and red. Upon hearing this, Xian Wenrui's expression also darkened. He had initially thought Lianchang was merely indecisive but fundamentally decent. Now it seemed nothing more than a hypocrite and a petty villain. Yize glanced at Cui Yingying unconscious in Lianchang's arms and said with a sardonic smile, so you really believe everything Cui Yingying told you about me and her? Who knows how much of it was true and how much false? Lianchang's heart sank to the depths, his trust in Cui Yingying gradually crumbling. But this was none of Yize's concern. The reason he spared Cui Yingying's life now was simply that letting her die easily would be too merciful. In his past life, she had died too easily. In this life, since he had time, he would make her suffer more. Lianchang was an indecisive, suspicious man, yet he had his own principles. Once a seed was planted in his heart, given Cui Yingying's temperament, she would likely keep causing trouble and deepening his doubts. Let them torment each other for a while. Eventually Lianchang would likely abandon Cui Yingying, who had become a burden. By then, Cui Ming, knowing his only daughter was ruined, would probably quickly seek a foster daughter advantageous to him, given his nature. As for Cui Yingying, Cui Ming did have some affection for her, but it couldn't compare to his own self-interest. In the end, Cui Yingying would be nothing more than a discarded pawn in Cui Ming's hands. A crippled, powerless Cui Yingying. How would she survive in this cruel apocalypse? Just imagining the scene brought Yize immense satisfaction. After getting in the car, Xian Wenrui noticed his brother Lu was in a good mood. He felt a twinge of doubt, glanced at his sister-in-law, who seemed indifferent to everything, then back at Yize. Speak your mind. Yize's voice startled him. He knew he couldn't hide things, so he didn't dwell on it, and didn't bottle it up. Brother Lu, did you and Cui Yingying ever date? He naturally assumed so after hearing Cui Yingying's accusations and Lianchang's words. Yize, whose expression was usually impassive, showed a look of utter disgust. Why would you think I'd ever be interested in Cui Yingying? Hearing this, Xian Wenrui realized he must have misunderstood. True, Cui Yingying was fairly good-looking, but compared to his sister-in-law, even though she had turned into a zombie, she was still infinitely more beautiful than Cui Yingying. Moreover, Cui Yingying's manipulative nature was hardly something Brother Lu would like. Yeah, you wouldn't fancy her. Then, do you and Cui Yingying also have a grudge? I almost threw up when you chopped off her hands and feet, but after I came to my senses I felt relieved. If not for his incredible luck, anyone else in his place would have been killed by Cui Yingying by now. Cui Yingying's sisters had died earlier too. Now that he thought about it, who knew if there was foul play involved? A grudge? Of course there is. Yize unconsciously tightened his grip on Jiang Yu's hand. The grudges between them from their past life couldn't be explained in just a few words. But in this life I can never forgive her. Jiang Yu ended up like this because of her scheming. As Yize spoke, murderous intent flickered in his eyes. Xian Wenrui knew just how much Yize valued Jiang Yu. Even though she had turned into a zombie, he kept her by his side, never leaving her and never letting her get hurt. It was because of Chui Yingying that Jiang Yu was forced to become a zombie. Xian Wenrui gasped at the thought. No wonder his brother Lu hated her so much. Suddenly he understood. During his earlier investigation of Jiang Yu, Lu Yize learned not only these basic details, but also some other matters. Jiang Yu was a few academic years junior to Lu Yize and Chui Yingying, but Chui Yingying had inadvertently discovered Jiang Yu's affection for Lu Yize. Chui Yingying was problematic. She looked down on Lu Yize, yet she wouldn't allow anyone else to fancy him. That was because she couldn't bear the thought of Lu Yize's money being spent on others. Her entire family had long regarded everything belonging to Lu Yize as their own. Furthermore, they planned to have Lu Yize marry Chui Yingying in the future, thereby seizing the opportunity to take over his company. Thus, upon learning that Jiang Yu liked Lu Yize, Chui Yingying instantly felt a strong sense of crisis. Jiang Yu was beautiful, far more so than any of Lu Yize's previous admirers. Beautiful and talented Jiang Yu stirred not only a sense of threat, but also jealousy in Chui Yingying. Then, after hearing that a strange person had been lurking around the teaching building recently, a glint flashed in Chui Yingying's eyes. She had conceived a plan to kill two birds with one stone and ruin Jiang Yu. Knowing that Jiang Yu intended to confess her feelings to Lu Yize, Chui Yingying deliberately lured her to the building rumored to harbor a pervert. She hoped that the pervert would see Jiang Yu's beauty and commit some irreparable act. However, to Chui Yingying's surprise, Lu Yize also happened to go there. Fearing that they might inadvertently run into each other, she immediately grabbed her things and rushed over. But when she arrived, Chui Yingying was so terrified she dared not make a sound. Not only was that strange person dead, but both Jiang Yu and Lu Yize were lying on the ground, their condition unknown. As she drew closer, she noticed a letter protruding from Jiang Yu's embrace. Upon reading the words on it, a sneer spread across her face. Determined to see the matter through, she simply stuffed the letter into her pocket and took it away, determined that Lu Yize must never see it. After learning all this, Lu Yize suddenly decided he wouldn't let Chui Yingying die so easily. That would be far too merciful. Just thinking about these matters, a flicker of ruthlessness passed through his eyes. He wanted Chui Yingying to suffer a fate worse than death. Feeling uncomfortable as her hand was being squeezed, Jiang Yu wasn't one to tolerate it. She discreetly tried to pull her hand free. It was her movement that brought Lu Yize back to his senses. Looking down at her jade-like skin for a moment, his heart was pierced by a sharp pang. Had it not been for Jiang Yu, when the zombie attacked, it would have been him who was disemboweled and long since dead. Just thinking about how long Jiang Yu had been alone in the cold morgue in their past life made Lu Yize's heart feel as if it were being tightly clutched by a hand, aching unbearably. Lu Yize looked at their intertwined hands and the rings they wore, and his heart gradually settled back in this life, he would make those who had harmed her pay with their blood. Brother Lu, we're here, Xian Wenrui said, stopping the car with discretion at the entrance to his own small hut, not driving any further. By then Lu Yize had already composed himself. He responded with a grunt and got out of the car with Jiang Yu. However, instead of heading straight into their own safe house, he led Jiang Yu into Xian Wenrui's hut. Jiang Yu was somewhat intrigued by Xian Wenrui's dilapidated hut. It was different from the place she lived in. Hers was not so shabby, nor did it have the pleasant scent of decay everywhere. But the next moment she no longer cared about rot or no rot, because a large piece of armor suddenly appeared before her, hiding pure white meat within. Is this the meat of a mutant centipede? Xian Wenrui was startled by the centipede meat that had suddenly appeared in his home. Xian Wenrui was timid and trembled with fear at the sight of the mutant centipede. Only after scanning up and down, left and right to confirm there was no mutant centipede did his rationality return. He realized that this should be the meat from the mutant centipede that had been chopped into pieces earlier. This meat. Xian Wenrui wisely chose to shut his mouth. Although Lu Yize had never explicitly stated what his ability was, he hadn't hidden it either. Based on the several occasions he had witnessed, Xian Wenru roughly guessed that brother Lu must possess a spatial ability. Is the spatial ability really this powerful? A hint of admiration for the strong welled up in Xian Wenrui. Keep it to eat, Lu Yize said, leaving 2 pieces of mutant centipede meat and preparing to leave. During the earlier fight with the mutant centipede, though Xian Wenrui's contribution was barely noticeable, at least he had participated. Lu Yize didn't mind giving him 2 pieces of mutant centipede meat to fill his stomach. Xian Wenrui, who before the apocalypse was deathly afraid of insects, now looked at these 2 pieces of meat as tall as himself, his expression shifting through various emotions. In the end, he cast aside all his fears. Times were dire now. Who could afford to be picky? Besides, what was wrong with centipede meat? Before the apocalypse, there were already some specialty dishes in the Southwest made from insects, so it probably wasn't inedible. Xian Wenrui looked as if he were marching to his death with heroic resolve, which moved Lu Yize to kindly remind him, eating it benefits ability users. Don't waste it. Upon hearing that it was good for his ability, Xian Wenrui's eyes instantly lit up. Forget about eating centipede meat. Even if it were eating shit, Well, that's an exaggeration, but you get the idea. He could do it. After a single battle, and absorbing an ability core, Xian Wenrui felt his power had soared. At the very least, he could now produce water like a faucet. It was almost tearfully moving. Brother Lu, how about I store some water for you? I should be able to produce at least a bucket a day, Xian Wenrui said, and without delay he grabbed a bucket and got to work. Yize did not refuse. This repetitive process of depleting his ability was also a form of training for Xian Wenrui, which could enhance his ability usage. The sooner his ability grew stronger, the sooner they could enjoy unrestricted access to water. Although Yize had stored plenty of water and had purchased a water filtration machine at a high price, it was still nowhere near as clean as the water condensed by a water-type ability user. Xian Wenrui's current water output was still not very high. As he labored, Yize glanced over a couple of times. In that brief moment when his attention was elsewhere, Jiang Yu tore open the shell of Xian Wenrui's piece of mutant centipede meat with her claw and bit off an entire chunk. Xian Wenrui, who was in the middle of producing water, stood stunned on the side, watching his sister-in-law bite off a piece of meat the size of a fist. Inwardly he exclaimed, "Awesome." Yize, seeing Jiang Yu eating recklessly, darkened his face. She hadn't even washed the meat properly. It seemed the lesson from last time about eating carelessly wasn't enough. Yize grabbed Jiang Yu and took out another piece of mutant centipede meat, handing it to Xian Wenrui. No, Brother Lu, it's fine. Take it. I don't lack this piece." Xian Wenrui looked gratefully at Jiang Yu, who was being dragged by Yize. His sister-in-law was so kind. Afraid he wouldn't have enough to eat, she had deliberately staged that act to get him an extra piece of meat for free. Noticing his gaze, Yize frowned. He didn't mind giving away a piece of mutant centipede meat. It was nothing. But before leaving, he cut off the part that Jiang Yu had bitten and took it with him. Seeing the cleanly cut edge, Xian Wenrui, who wasn't that slow on the uptake, immediately understood Brother Lu's intent. It was possessiveness at work. Afraid that his wife might have even the slightest indirect contact with others, he was overly protective. Day after day being force-fed dog food, Xian Wenrui felt like shouting, "This is crazy. I really don't want to be a cuckold." Jiang Yu, being dragged along, was also quite displeased. She had only taken one bite, just one. She hadn't even eaten her fill before Yize pulled her away. Yize was getting harsher and harsher with her. "They'll make you something delicious when we get back." Knowing that she was gradually able to understand human speech, Yize offered an explanation. Jiang Yu might not understand other words, but the two characters for eat seemed deeply etched into her soybean-sized zombie brain. After a bit of neural processing, she grasped the meaning. Instantly, she retracted her claws, becoming docile, obediently following beside Yize, even curiously poking her head out. She decided to trust Yize one more time. This zombie was truly quite clever. Yize patted her head, feeling that she was increasingly resembling her past life self. The man and the zombie walked into the safe house. Inside the safe house that Yize had specially built, he had designated an area exclusively for cooking. Pots, pans, bowls, and utensils were all available, made of stainless steel, to prevent zombies from smashing them. He had previously stockpiled many recipes, and since he already knew how to cook a bit, he followed the recipes and made dishes that turned out fairly decent. In his past life, right after the little zombie saved him, besides crystal cores, he also ate many mutant plants and animals, among which mutant ants, mutant rats, and mutant centipedes were the most consumed. To be precise, mutant centipede tasted the best. When the dark black shell was cracked open, the meat inside was snow white, unlike the flesh of ordinary centipedes. This centipede meat was not as greasy as pure white pork. Instead, it resembled an oversized lobster, both in appearance and texture. Firm, chewy, with a unique seafood flavor. Not stinky, but possessing a natural sweetness. Having grown up in an orphanage, Yize wasn't particular about food, but he wanted Jiang Yu to eat well. Following the recipe, he prepared a large bowl of mutant centipede meat in the style of Boston lobster. He even took out some vermicelli and laid it underneath. The garlic-flavored mutant centipede meat, when cooked, gave off an aroma several times more fragrant than lobster. After all, ordinary lobsters are only larger in size, while mutant centipedes contain supernatural energy within them, making them incomparable to regular lobsters in taste. After evolution, the greatest change in zombies was probably gaining senses, human-like smell and taste. At this moment, Jiang Yu, since turning into a zombie, had smelled such an aroma for the first time. Without any coaxing from Yize, she stuck close to him on her own. Like a tail, she followed behind Yize step by step. Wherever he went, she went with glistening saliva at the corners of her mouth. When the mutant centipede meat was cooked and served, Jiang Yu grabbed it with her hands. Zombies have thick skin and feel no heat, so she stuffed it directly into her mouth. Afraid she would burn her esophagus and hands, Yize immediately stopped her. He used chopsticks to place the mutant centipede meat into the bowl in front of her. You need to learn to use tools to eat, understand? Yize was doing his utmost to teach this zombie to be more human, striving to set her apart from other zombies. He taught her carefully, just as she had taken care of him in his past life, when he was paralyzed and suspicious. As a zombie, Jianyu believed her own claws were the best tools and couldn't understand why Yize insisted she use utensils. But Yize did not yield. Jianyu sensed danger from him, so despite her reluctance, she picked up the chopsticks and kept poking at the contents of the bowl. If a child could learn to use chopsticks, then unfortunately Jianyu's brain at that moment was inferior to even a child's. She couldn't learn as she poked the centipede meat to pieces without getting a single bite. Just as she grew furious and was about to flip the table, Yize aside and fed her with a spoon. One mouthful of garlic-scented centipede meat perfectly soothed the irritable zombie. At least she had no intention of throwing a tantrum anymore and obediently ate bite after bite. Want to try learning? Yize handed the spoon to Jianyu. Jianyu hated using these things as she couldn't learn. But she was clever. She immediately wrapped her arms around Yize's waist. She nuzzled against him as if acting spoiled, then raised her face, her pitch-black eyes blinking twice. Yize's heart melted at the sight. Forget it, if you can't learn, that's fine. As long as I'm here, I can always make sure you eat cleanly. Yize aside softly reached out and patted her head. Forget it, if you don't want to learn, then don't. Jianyu didn't understand, but she was very satisfied eating when Yize fed her. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Yize wiped her mouth clean. At this moment, Jianyu leaned and sniffing the food she considered most fragrant, feeling a bit tempted. She opened her mouth and bit Yize's hand that was dangling in front of her, but she didn't bite hard, just held it between her teeth, grinding lightly to taste the flavor. Suddenly she no longer wanted to eat this food. She wanted to keep him as a backup to eat him when there was no other. Yize had grown accustomed to being bitten by Jianyu. He didn't know where she had developed this bad habit, but since he wouldn't end up turning into a zombie from it, he let her be. But perhaps because she was full, Jianyu would bite for a while, then lick the same spot she had bitten. It was unclear who she was provoking. Yize's eyes grew deep. He carried her to bathe her. After washing, the little zombie's waist-length black hair was smooth and tame, making the entire zombie look very obedient. Yize sat the zombie in his lap. I want to show you something. Jianyu looked at him in confusion, but because she was full and had much energy yet to digest, she had no desire to eat for now. She simply found a comfortable spot to nestle. Yize wrapped his arms around her, took out 2 red marriage certificates, and opened them to reveal their joint. Jianyu couldn't read, but she recognized Yize. Suddenly seeing the photo of Yize on the certificate, she looked up at the real Yize, then back at the Yize in the photo. She frowned, tilted her head, and touched the slightly upturned corner of Yize's mouth in the photo. She didn't know what emotion this was, but it seemed he rarely had such an expression. She turned again, touched the corner of Yize's mouth, and then saw him give a soft laugh. He then held her even tighter, so tight that it was slightly uncomfortable, yet surprisingly Jianyu didn't want to break free. Yize whispered in her ear, complex emotions nearly overflowing. After marriage, we are a family, understand? Obviously Jianyu didn't know. She didn't know what marriage meant, nor did she understand what family was. However, she was affected by Yize's mixed emotions of bitterness and joy. Unexpectedly, she reached out and returned a very, very light hug. At that moment, Yize's heart and soul were deeply shaken.